Hello, hello. It's alright, I'm just trying to work something out. That doesn't seem good. I'm getting feedback because OBS is pumping back to me stuff I don't want to be hearing, so I hope you're not getting the feedback. Why is it that every week this is different? Oh, that's turned on. So why did I... Okay. I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna turn and yeah, but I've got a horrible feeling this is gonna kill you what you hear. Maybe not. Maybe not. So let's stick with that. There we go. I now can't hear myself. The thingies are still going up and down. So hopefully you still hear me. You still hear the music. And I don't hear me or the music. So that would be a good thing. So how have you been this week? This week has been a bit of a trial for me. I've mentioned them to you. I've mentioned on many occasions that I get migraines, and I mentioned a little while ago I had one that was very similar in kind of effect to the Star Trek Nexus. So I think it's Generations. You have to forgive me if I got the wrong one. Where basically it's the one where Captain Kirk dies twice and they're trying to get back into the Nexus, and you have that kind of tear across space that has this kind of glowing, frondy, moving, wiggly things. I had one of those a little while ago and I've had another one this week and I'm still very much suffering. So I am very conscious of the fact that I have quite a good active migraine at this point in time. And so the fact, if you've seen on Discord, that some idiot has been out the back all day, chopping tree, grinding tree, chunking things, dropping things, bashing things. But not, I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if it was for that one tree that blocks all the sunshine from my garden. Because if that was going, I would more than happily suffer the noise. But of course it's not. And I know from the picture it doesn't look like that tree would block all the sunshine. But realistically, my house is like 1 pixel off to the left of that picture. And the amount of sun that gets between my house and the tree, from the left-hand side, because that's the way the sun goes around, is not very long. And of course, it's on a very much downward angle, kind of on a backslash kind of trajectory. So by the time it comes out to the other side of the tree, it's kind of behind the fence. So I've only got a little bit of time. And you've also got to remember that the reason I took a picture of that tree then was because they'd just chopped down a big pile of other trees and bushes and things that were to the left of the tree. See, there they go again. That were nearly the height of my house. They were weeds mainly, but, well, it was mainly buddleia, which isn't a weed, but is a weed, if you know what I mean. And so, to be honest, yes, in that picture it was a lot more open than it had been, like, 2 hours earlier. So, hello, Rory. Rory has a confession, don't you, Rory? Yes. Rory would like to confess that yesterday, once again, he suffered from his little PTSD moment. Hello! That's okay. You can do that. You can do that. But Rory woke up yesterday evening and chose violence, didn't you? Yes. And took a great chunk out of Amy. Now, not enough that it warranted a vet visit, but enough that Amy is feeling a bit sorry for herself today. She's, in essence, I think, although he chose violence with his face, because he does tend to try and bite people when he wakes up like that. Lie down. I think he got her with his claws. So she's got like 2 slash marks across her shoulder. And there wasn't any blood. It's, there was not, I didn't have to clean the furniture or the carpet. It's not that, so it wasn't that kind of level of thing. But obviously, like lots of scratches, sometimes you can scratch it. So it is the colour of blood, but without the blood, so it's right, just, there's like 1 atom layer of skin holding it back. And I think she basically, well, there was minor loss of fur in the 2 scratch marks, because I found the little tufts afterwards. But it's a bit bruised. It certainly was this morning. We woke up and we were not keen on walking heavily on that leg. We did milk it a little bit because the moment there was a dog biscuit, it was fine. It's funny how that works. How to tell if your dog is capable of normal walking or whether it is actually a true injury? Dog biscuit. Because if they can follow you with a dog biscuit without the merest hint, there is some milking. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't hurt. I'm not saying that it is pleasant to be walked upon. But it does prove things like it's not broken, it's not dislocated, it's not, terminal. It is a small distraction suddenly makes it a hell of a lot better. And she's now walking around pretty much like nothing happened. So it was clearly just a bit stiff and bruised this morning, and she's kind of getting over it. And is in fine form as she's just leapt off the couch. So, and speaking of the couch, my couch died last weekend. I have repaired it, but it died a bit spectacular like. And it's now held together with a car jack. Basically, it gave way. And so, hello, little miss. Are you a good girl? You are. Yes. Because when I called, you were the first who came back. Yes, you were. Yes, I know. But yes, so but I have noticed one thing. Clearly, I think my couch had been showing minor hints that it was unhappy, because now it's held up with a car jack, and I know that the couch is supported to the level of where it should be and all that kind of things. It's actually a lot more comfortable to sit on. So there had been signs that I was unaware of along the way. So it's been... I've had stresses this week. Boss is off for the next... Well, Boss went on... Well, he had a meeting Wednesday, I think it was. Yeah, he had a meeting Wednesday, so he was out most of Wednesday. And then he's been on holiday since Thursday, and he's off for 2 weeks. So that's fun. Or not, as the case may be. But let us get down to this. There you go. I have been... Hi, Nautical. So, the lace lady has returned. Indeedy. Oh, brain cells. If only I had a brain. Right. Mind you, it's definitely been one of those weeks where even on my worst week, I look at someone else and kind of go, yeah, still better than that. So it's definitely been one of those kind of weeks for sure. Our most least productive team member has had a bit of a rough week because, well, he's had to do some work, so which was quite amusing for the rest of us. I'm not sure he found it amusing, but it was quite amusing for the rest of us. But in fairness, he stepped up, he's done the things that he was asked to do, so he is capable of doing it. But it does seem that if you don't ask him, he doesn't do. So he will, over the next 2 weeks, be doing work. Possibly a lot more than he thinks he will. What am I going to do? Hello, Rory. Don't need Doggety assistance. I really, really don't. I'm old enough and big enough and fat enough to do my own. Yes, I am. No. No. I thought this morning 2 of our lot hadn't showed up for work because they were both showing out of office, but they were not down as being on holiday. And it turned out they were just daft and had got something in their calendar about Boss being out and marked themselves as out of office as well. Rory, I know I love you, and this works very much, thank you, in your favour. Yeah, exactly. The mayhem just never stops. You just never get 5 minutes of nothing, you know? I believe one of my neighbours might have gone out. Or someone did a turnaround or something. I mean, yeah, they're allowed to, you know, move. Other people are allowed to have a life, you know. I know it's a strange concept, but some people have lives. I don't understand this design myself, but, you know, it has been known that other people have lives. Animal! Less noise. That didn't work at all, did it? Yeah, it's better. You need a bit of a tug. So yes, how's everybody doing? I do apologise once again for not streaming last week, but the sun was out. It wasn't overly warm, but the sun was out, and well, there were lions and tigers and bears and things in the garden. The garden has now been finally came, and the grass is now, you know, short enough that I don't lose dogs in it, which is always a bonus. But of course the sun has not, so but it was the first kind of sunny day of the year, and the dogs were being a bit grumpy, so going outside, playing a bit of ball, you know, I mean, I had to go and get it 90% of the time, but so not the point. It was just nice to go out and do kind of doggety things, and because obviously having had the clocks go back recently, oh no, naughty Cal! I of all people understand exactly how painful that is. I have done very similar style landing, and it's one of the, I mean, obviously it's not your coccyx in my example, but one of the things that I've always hated is when doctors want to give you an injection in your butt. Because if you've got a sore arm, you can kind of tuck it in your jumper or in your cardigan, or I think it is. It really doesn't like being bashed very much down there. But at least if you've got a sore arm, you can kind of tuck your arm in a cardigan or in your shirt and kind of make a makeshift sling out of it. And even if it is your dominant arm for whatever reason, because usually they do your non-dominant, but even if it is your dominant arm, you can reduce the usage of it. But you can still sit down. You can still lie down, even if you have to place your arm a bit careful. When you've hurt a leg, you might want to rest it on a stool. You might need some support for it and a couple of cushions. But you can't rest your butt. Whatever you do, your butt seems to be involved. And so whenever you lie down, you know, the weight of one butt cheek trying to gravitate towards the other, even if you don't really have much of a butt, can still be a bit too much. Because obviously weight of your pelvis and all the rest of it. And it just doesn't like it. So Nautica, oh my man. Oh my poor man. You silly Billy. So it's mine. Well, I cracked mine in half. So, proper. Got X-ray. I had X-rays of it and everything. Yeah, I split off the whole of my right hip. Oh, we talk about all manner of stuff here. Yes, this is not, my stream is not, sadly not, if you're, as you're new, the stream is not exactly lace educational. It is general chat while Liz randomly, occasionally remembers to move her bobbins. We're not shouting at a smaller, not, well, not that small, but somewhat an annoying dog. What's she doing now? So we have random. How dare you accuse me of normal? I am so not normal. But yes, it is pretty random. Hello, Rory. Why are you grovelling? What have you done? What did you do? What are you sorry for? You're doing the sorry creep. What are you sorry for? Don't lick my jumper. I said, do not lick my jumper. I am not a buffet. Basically, yes. So I have two dogs, Rory and Amy. Let me quickly show you them so you have a bit of a picture. Have fun. I'm sure. Well, Chris, that for those who don't realise, that means Christy will be listening, but she'll be working. So, hi, Christy. Let me introduce Puppers. Hang on. Right. So the black one is Rory. So Rory is the black one. Amy is the brown one. Rory, they think you're cute. They don't know you very well, do they? They are very cute. They are 5 years old. No. Yeah, 5 years old. They are 5 years old now. It's hard to remember that. Well, they'll be 6 in June. So they're nearly 6. You are nearly 6, and yet you still Oh, naughty. Exactly. This is my puppies. I love them dearly. I love them more when they're asleep. But Rory as well, we definitely think we're little puppies. Now Rory as a whole is very gentle and kind of chill and placid and yeah, whatever. Unless you want to trim his claws, in which case he is made of teeth and violence. Otherwise, pretty much, yeah, whatever. Little Miss is basically a flying face hugger out of Alien. She will be sitting on the floor, and the next thing you know is her stomach is on your face and her legs are kind of wrapped around your head. The best part of 40-something pounder dog flying face hugging is a little off-putting. But she is full on blue smarty. She is crackhead. Now it has to be said, if you have more than one dog, it does seem to be one of them will be a crackhead. It's Amy. It is absolutely Amy. I had a dog like that. She was called Fiona. She wasn't very cuddly, but her fur was so soft and it was really disappointing because she would have been an excellent cuddle bunny. The reason I'm not moving anything at the moment, in case you didn't spot the nose earlier, is that I have a little black dog, yes you, sitting on my lap in the way. So this is as far as I can reach at the moment. Oh no. It is always sad when they're a little like that because, you know, we all like to hug our dogs. But I can't get rid of you, can I? No, I can't. But she's terrible. She wants the hug, but by the time she's got within about 50% distance of being able to be hugged, so she's put 2 feet on your lap or she's on the couch next to you. Well, yeah, basically, well, let's face it. You tread on one dog hair, even if it's not attached to the dog. Yelp, 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 you're killing me, you're killing me. They walk through your bare feet with their claws, or stand on private parts of a sensitive nature. Well, you're just a pansy now, aren't you? How dare you look offended or yelp? I mean, what's wrong with you? You must want your £50 dog standing on your nipples or whatever, and you're like, no, not with your claws at least. Yes. Amy unfortunately seems to believe that my boob area is very much for mountaineering, and it just adds footholds, which is slightly distracting. Thank you, Rory. You're really helping there. As if to prove the point. Thank you very much. Little man, this is not your pillow. I know it's called a lace pillow, but it is not supposed to be for dog heads. Little man. But between him and his sister, 90% of the time, if you hear a noise, it won't be him. It'll be her. Now, what actually happens is she is not as stupid as she makes out. She may be a crackhead, but what she does do is she winds him up to make him move and get out of the way so that she can have a better spot. She can maybe get a bigger biscuit that she'll have forgotten why she was trying to get him to move to get the spot and then go off. But basically, she'll decide, say, she wants to sit on my lap. So she'll claim that there's, people coming to steal all the food or something out the front of the house. He'll get up to see if it needs, actually seeing off. But by then she's forgotten she meant to steal his spot when he moved. So, it's very chaotic for them in here. Yes, you. You're not helping. You're really, really not. I do love you. Yes. Yes, I know. Oh, dear. Dear me. Is it a hard life being a puppy dog with all of your food and love taken cared for and all of the games that we play and the huggies that we have? Is it? It is. Oh, okay. I didn't realise this. My bad. It's a bit like... Well, it would be funny if it was the other way round, would it not? Whereas we live in the house all day and do whatever the fuck we like, maybe bark at a passing leaf or something, and they have to earn all the money and pay all the bills and fix all the shit. And clean everything and cook everything and you know, make sure we've got food and water and heat and that, you know, all of our ailments are taken care of. It would be great, wouldn't it? Now, we all appreciate that there are the less fortunate, but there's less fortunate people as well. So let's not pretend that all dog, you know, I do think that as a general whole, animals do have a worse life than if in that comparison to humans, but for an average looked after, you know, even just reasonably looked after dog, let alone the pampered kind of, mind you, I wouldn't want to be the pampered human, dear God no, but having you know, basically entertainment and food and toys and your health cared for and you know, basically being able to do what the heck you liked all day. Come in, go out, demand people open doors for you, feed you, water you. You know, it doesn't... I mean, they always use the phrase dog's life. I'd certainly trade places for a bit. I mean, you know, even just as a experiment, it would be great to have, you know, 1 week of swapping roles. For you have to have walk a mile in the other's shoes, you know. Rory, can you stop licking my damn hand? I don't mind my dogs licking me. I never have. You can lick my face as long as I can still breathe. But hands, I don't mind a little bit of licking on the old hand. But once it starts getting a bit cooler, it's got to stop because it's making my hand itch then. And I don't like it when you lick my jumpers. That's off limits. Licking of jumpers is off limits. Because, well, that's just minging. Ray. Little man. I can't believe you're going to be 6 this year. Really can't. Time has flown by. Really, really has. Hard to believe you're nearly 6. Isn't it? Hard to believe you're nearly 6. Because that means Charlie and Brown have been gone nearly 8 years. That's a long time. It's a long time. Right. No! Do not go through the lace cushion! He's done that one before. Sorry about that. He looked like he was about to try and do his flying leap through the lace cushion table. Rory is not a great leaper, and the distance between... Oh, it is. But the direction here is not a clear path to the garden. But the garden is over there. And Rory was definitely thinking of trying to take the shortcut when there is no way he can clear that because he's just not that good at it. So let's not be thinking that that was an option here, dog. You know. But now he's gone. Let's quickly get back to what we should be doing. Otherwise, this damn thing will never grow. So yes. As I say, I do love my dogs, but I love them even more when they're asleep. You go over there, 1, 2, 3. You go over there as well. And then we need some of you. 1, 2, 3. You're twisted, you're not. Make some of you slightly longer. It's rather distracting during the week because Rory has a habit of licking things. Just in general. Anything, to be honest. As I said, he suckles his sister's ears, which is pretty gross, actually. But one thing he does occasionally do is he likes licking my trousers. But he likes lying behind me, so you'll be sitting in a meeting, because I work from home. No, there is not room for you now. No, there's no room for you now. I have to go and do dog things. Go on. I'll be in a meeting and he'll start licking my trouser butt. So it's not my actual butt because there's trousers in the way, but he'll be licking them, and it's really distracting having your butt licked while you try to have a serious meeting. Fortunately, the people I work with are used to. Excuse me, I must mute. and then, sorry about that. The dog was licking my trousers. And then they'll all be laughing. Yeah, I've got cushions. I've got a couple of cushions. So this one's looking a little bit secondhand. So it needs a wash. Please bear that in mind. But this one, which I made, never mind. Yeah. Animals! Animals. Amy, you're being annoying. You're being all of the annoyings. No, that does not mean come and stand on me. No, it does not. No. It says, hello. Is it your turn now? It is. How's your shoulder doing? Let me have a quick look. Oh, that's it. That looks perfectly fine now. It's just missing a little bit of fur, isn't it? You lie down. It's all good. Yes, it is. I know. He's a big, mean, furry face, isn't he? Yes, he was. But you do give almost as good as you get, so don't be pretending you're complete sweetness and innocence in all of this. No. Because you wind him up, and every time he goes outside and you go and open the door for him, you give him one hell of a pile of poo. You do. You are really mean to him when you've done that. You are. You are. Little one. Yes, you. Well, so you have got a few little nicks around your face, actually, haven't you? Just spotted them. Or is that a new one? There's a couple of tiny patches of fur. Almost like a fingernail mark. So, well, I'm not saying you deserved it, but you didn't exactly not deserve it either. You are not totally innocent, young lady. Do not be pretending that you are. And I do realise... Yay! I've just discovered that Amy's got a couple of nicks on her face. Literally almost like something... You know, if I got something soft and stabbed it with a... They do. She's terrible to her brother. So, as I said, her brother did take some chunks out of her yesterday. But I've noticed, as I say, it looks like she's got... if I had something soft like blue tack or something, not that I've particularly got any nails, as you may have noticed, but if I did that, there'd be slight nail prints. She's got a couple of those, kind of something that looks a bit like that on her face. So obviously maybe a tooth or a claw, but not an actual, there's no blood, it's not sore. But then at the same time, she, you know, as you say, oh, well, except for the fact that if he... Pretty much. It's almost like a parting of the fur. It's not even really an indent. There's just looks to be, you know, 3 hairs missing or something, right? So that it gives it a look of a hole, but there isn't a hole. But what she does do, so don't be kind of too, oh, well, poor Amy. I mean, don't get me wrong, it probably hurt, and did she deserve it? Maybe not on this particular occasion. But you've also got to realise that if he goes out and doesn't feel he can open the door to get back in, because I've got a weird door system I've set up where the door has something to stop it properly closing, but it also has a thing to pull it to so that they can push it open, walk out. A small port, it will open, but it will naturally gravitate back to being closed, kind of thing. Well, pulled to, but it can't close, so that they can come and go as they like. And if he goes out and decides that he doesn't think he can open the door because he's been a bit of a wuss, he can open the door. He's always able to open the door. She goes to let him in and gives him so much shit about it. She growls at him. She bites at him. So she is not innocent. You know, just because on this particular case she may not have fully deserved it, she's not innocent. It's, you know, in most law, in most courts, so UK, US, whatever, you're either guilty or not guilty. The Scottish, bless them, have a third option, and they're not wrong. Not proven. I.e., we're pretty confident that you kind of deserve it, but we can't prove it. So you're not innocent, you're not guilty for sure, but... And so she would definitely be in the not proven category, in that just because last night maybe she had not done something that millisecond, it does not mean she hasn't done other things to deserve a bit of a in dog variety. So, you know, Rory, you're being annoying. So you're being annoying, Rory. You are. We've been doing this quite a while now. You should be used to me doing this. And it's funny, I'm sure as a fellow dog owner, you understand this one. If I was sitting here watching telly, I wouldn't be sat on and they wouldn't be asking me for hugs. It's only because I'm talking. If I wasn't talking, they'd probably leave me alone. Or just occasionally come up and give me a boop, get a quick pat on the head and walk off. But because I'm talking, they're not, they know they're not centre of attention. I mean, I talk to them a lot, so, but because I'm not looking at them all the time and, you know, talking to them and patting them and fussing them, they know I must be talking to someone else. So they're jealous of the fact that I'm talking to you lot, which is why I am being licked again. Yes. I did notice, funnily enough. Now, don't sneak another lick in. I'm sure your dog does that. Stop licking that. Okay. Little lizard tongue kind of flickers out and takes yet another lick. Well, if you've got more than one, I think most of us are. If you've ever had more than one pet, whichever pet is currently getting a hug, a pat, even if it's pills and it didn't want them, the others are, but you're getting something I'm not. Yeah. You get yelled at too. You do. And you're about to get yelled at again in a minute. If you cannot push against the lace table. I am currently holding him to prevent him pushing the lace table. Otherwise, it will be shooting in that direction. Come on, out! Come on! Well, that's a good thing. I mean, I had a dog. His name was Sandy when I was a kid, and he was very much my brother. He was very much, I treated him as he was not, the dog. He was my brother, and I would have, put my life down for the dog, and the dog would have done the same for me. And in fact, Rory, I said no. Otherwise, this pin could go in your nose. Okay. Amy, unfortunately, also had a little bit of a mishap earlier this week. As you well know, yes, he is. His patience is not greatest this week, and Rory's insistence is not welcome. But Amy had a bit of an accident earlier this week, and arguably my fault. I'm not going to deny some level of involvement in this, although not deliberately. She found a pin on the floor and she'd stepped on it. And I turned around and it was like, why are you holding your foot up? And she looked at me with the bitch. And it was kind of like, oh, you've got a pin sticking out of it. Well, having done it to myself, yeah. Don't get me wrong, I've done it to myself. And it does freaking hurt. Do not get me wrong. So, well, the one I did to myself was worse. Now, if you are slightly squeamish, do not picture the picture, right? Because I'm a person, I have very good anti-squeamish things. I can talk about and think about anything you like as long as I don't picture it. So I can talk about vomit, poo, biological accidents, and it's fine. Just do not picture it, otherwise the following could be... So, disclaimer, if you are sensitive, mute this and I will do a waving thing to tell you when I've finished, because it's going to be short, right? I put my sandwich down. I picked up my sandwich. I bit into my sandwich. A pin had got to the back of my sandwich. I chomped on it and it was in my tongue quite far back, so that the pin was in my mouth and kind of waggling around like this. Yep. And if I'd shut my mouth even the slightest, it would have gone a lot further in. And of course, I got 2 fingers in there trying to fish it out, but there wasn't really room to pull it out. That was quite frightening. So, right, we're done on the bad bit now, right? That was pretty terrifying. So, having done that, I bought a metal detector. You can buy little wands. They're about the size of an average large torch, and it's a metal detector, so I can do that. But obviously, because I didn't do any of this last week, I didn't think about it. And I don't know how it escaped or where it had actually escaped from, because I don't really use any pins for anything else. So, but Amy had stood on the pin, and so it was then in her paw. Not a lot, but enough that it was in her paw, and poor little Amy. So yeah, as I said, I am conscious of this because obviously, when you've got this many pins, bear in mind I've got tubs of pins everywhere. It is a strong potential. Just because thousands of pins, and the number of times I've done this and one's gone off the back, in its bid for freedom. Escapee pins are a thing, and I mean, for example, especially So I have one for demonstrative purposes that I can use for demonstrative purposes. Let me use my work phone as a to shout a bit better. Bent. Bent ones, of course, are a pain in the butt to work with. So as a result of bent pin, I take bent pin out. Well, of course, I can't just fling them because, well, they're pins. And so, well, I guess it might have been a bent one. Could even have been that one, to be honest. But pin ended up in the dog. She was not amused. She did just let me pick it out. She didn't yelp. She didn't say anything. She just stood there kind of going, I'm not putting this paw down now. And there was like a pin. Tink. Silly poor little girl. So it's not been Amy's week, frankly. You know, if she could sit here telling you tales, there would be sadness. It would not be. It would be. It's been a week. Rory, no. What part of no? No. Well, that too. I tend to group them together and then put them in something, or like you say, take them to something. But I tend to kind of batch them, for want of a better word. So I don't do each individual one at a time. I'll wait till I've got a few. Because, well, I am that kind of person. I deal in batches with lots of things, so... But yes, I think if Amy could be sitting here talking to you, she would definitely whine it's been a week. And that she's glad to see the back end of it. So, and the co-worker who texts me usually has already texted me because he's off on holiday. One thing you will find, because you constantly move pins around doing lace making, because this is usually full of sawdust, you'll find one and you never occasionally you push one in and you feel it bend. I did go through a spate of using some thinner pins and they were great, but you pretty much only had to say the word pin and one had bent. It literally got like that. We were chucking out 4 or 5, almost an hour, because they were that flimsy. And that was putting them into polystyrene. So, no real resist whatsoever. So, these are thicker pins. Yeah, my co-worker texted me just before I started doing this, because he's flying off for the weekend. He's booked a long weekend with work, off work, so he's taking Monday off, and someone's keyed his car, so he's in a happy mood because he reckons it's nearly £3,000 worth of damage. So yes, the answer truly is in the direction of the twists. So, while we are not summoning Nauticate, you may stay asleep for this, it's a bit like it's knotted together, but they're not knots, okay? So you twist them and they do little dances, but they're not knots. So the truth of the matter is, it is a little bit like the twisted braids. So while this is quite wholly, so let me zoomage in. Hang on, dunk. Right. As you can see, this is quite wholly. And this will keep that. Now, that does not mean that if you put something in it and pulled, they wouldn't move. Because they would, right? They are not super glued at every joint. They're not knotted so they can't move. So as a result, they do hold form. Hang on. There's a pot over here. Hang on. Right. Which one's this? This'll do. This is a pot of some other remnants of things. So, for example, let's pick this, because this will do. As you can see, I mean, it's quite sturdy. It doesn't really move. But if you really wanted to, you can push it around. But like everything, it's a bit like those tables where you have one bit of string from the bottom, one bit of string from the top, and it kind of holds them in suspension. The twists and everything encourage it to stay roughly equidistant from where, you know, so it stays where it is, because there's a twist before, a twist after, there's a twist over here, a twist over there. So it tends to keep the cross bit where it should be. And this is made of marginally thicker thread, and well, there is that. I know that, Nautical. And some things do not appreciate being tugged around, but you know, as an experimental triangle, part of the reason, I mean, if you think about it, I'm making a net curtain. Now, for the most part, we don't really tug on our net curtains. We might occasionally brush them aside to get a better view of the neighbours shouting at each other or whatever that we're doing, right? But as a general rule, your net curtain just sits there doing net curtain-y things. You've also got to remember, while ladies of leisure did occasionally make lace, they purely did it, as I'm doing, as a hobby. The people who did it for work, so most of the lace that you will see on any form of dresses or otherwise were made by the poor. And the poor, well, you know, I mean, the fact that lace was often white makes me laugh, because the people making them bathed like once every blue moon, and had, like, you know, one tooth and you know, and fingernails, and not that mine are great, but fingernails and everything that could make grown men cry. And yet they worked and produced the most beautiful white lace going. And they didn't have whites, they didn't have really have, I mean, they had starches, obviously they did. Maybe not quite like we do, and we certainly didn't have spray can starches for sure. But I do find it kind of interesting that, you know, we look at what they did back then during, you know, I mean, obviously, I think the bulk of the lace production was around the early 1800s, was the core true lace. But an awful lot of it was so that the rich and famous could flex, because the whole. I was watching a video, and you know, historians have decided that the lace ruffs that they had in kind of Elizabethan times round their necks were there purely to show you didn't drop your food. And you're sitting there going, and it was a bit like the same with your cuffs. If your cuffs could stay white, lacy, and in one piece, you didn't do any work. Because of course it's not exactly going to be long wearing. I mean, if you think of why jeans were made so that they were a long lasting, hard wearing trouser, right? Well, lace is the complete opposite to that. It's light, airy fairy, and basically if you breathed on it too hard, potentially could fall apart, because let's face it, these threads are not exactly strong, right? Now there is strength in numbers, blah blah blah, but it is, you know, they made lace out of finer stuff than this, and it truly is kind of quite remarkable. And again, some of the stuff that I find really interesting is the fact that they had access to such fine threads back then, when there was not really machinery to do it, that some poor cow sitting there with a spinning wheel had made those infinitely tiny threads by hand, which is an art form in its own right, and one that I am rather partial to. But I don't really make fine threads with it, but you know, technically I could. But it is there. I'm not sure I could make anything quite this thin and be sane. Let's be accurate. Technically, there is nothing stopping me making threads this fine. In practical terms, no, not doing it. It's a bit like when people ask you to knit and crochet with black. Not if I can help it. Lace making with black apparently is also equally painful, apparently. But then, as I can't tell which... well, you think back even as far as things like the Bayeux tapestry. The cloth that was embroidered onto was quite fine. There's quite a few historical things where there was a... we all know that, you can buy some fine Egyptian cotton sheets and they're like, 100 count sheets. They want anything claiming to be bigger than that's lying through its arse, especially if you can see any threads on it, they're lying through their arse. Because think about it. If it was more than 100 threads an inch, each thread... bear in mind, when you say 100 threads an inch, that's, say, 50 up, 50 down. If you can count those, well, they've got to be, less than 0.5 millimetre, including gaps, apart, right? Well, at 300, you're now talking 1/3 of half. That's fuck all of a millimetre, in colloquial terms. So being able to see it clearly, without having to squint and get up close, it's probably not, I mean, for example, hang on. I know it's in a shiny wrapper, but this is 40 count. And yes, you can make out the thing, but chances are half the sheets you own are almost similar to this, right? So if that's true, 100's got to be more than twice as dense as that. 300 would be 6 times denser than that. Yeah, I'm not convinced. Plus, of course, it would be so infinitely thin, it would be annoying. But, they have historical linens, for want of a better word, materials that were 1,200 count per inch. Just let that waft over your poor little brain cells. 25 millimetres, because it's an easy divisible by 10 kind of number. In 25 millimetres, 1,200 threads. That's like human hair shit, right? And they unspun that and hand wove it. Hats off to the buggers, that's for sure. And that was cotton. That wasn't even silk. That was cotton. So, it is interesting. It's a little bit like all the speculations on how they built the pyramids. Now, we do know, obviously, that they certainly had numbers. So, you can't dismiss a thing because it would take 1,000 people. Because, well, if they needed 1,000 people, they'd find 1,000 people. That's not the problem. Although, obviously, if you needed 1,000 people to move a stone, you've got to get close to it, and that could be a bit difficult, you know. Getting them all close enough and having long enough bits of string that you can actually have 1,000 people operating. But one of the things that, because I went to Egypt, and one of the most curious things that you see if you ever go there, is the guide showed us. So you may have heard of Cleopatra's Needle, which is a really, really tall pillar of rock, ends in a point, obviously, because that's why it's a needle. But basically, it's like 20, 30 feet tall. It is one solid piece of rock. Now, in your brain, you're kind of going, oh, okay. But they cut it out from a bedrock that was flat enough. And they've got one. There is still one in, there was one that failed. That they were cutting out and then cracked. So they left it. The gap is barely big enough to put your hand in. So the gap down the side of this kind of nearly 2 metre square, when standing, 2 metres girth thing, is about the width of my hand. And it's granite. So they were cutting, without lasers, something the width of my hand down 2 metres into the bedrock, and then underneath to free it, to slide it out and stand it up. We could barely do that with lasers today. And obviously that was a really freaking long time ago. So it is, I mean, this is the kind of thing I think that has always saddened me when you think of, say, history at school. They got you, I'm not saying that it's not worth studying history, because it sure as eggs is. But part of the problem I find with a lot of the history lessons that nearly all of us did at school was they seemed to find the most goddamn boring way of explaining any of it. Because if they'd said, here's an example of, me and my co-worker, we discussed something, because why is it that, they drag your sorry ass to see some local historical bullshit, whatever that may be. Or even not that local for that matter, but they take you somewhere in your country. Now, in my GCSEs, we covered medieval Britain, medieval medicine. Now, you'd have thought that would be interesting. We didn't do as much of it as that could have been interesting, because realistically, we only studied King George. And did he die from fiending? Yes or no? Some castles. We did a bit on castles. Mao Zedong and Emily Pankhurst. Now, none of those are necessarily dull subjects. But first of all, as a child, when you are a teenager and being in school is frankly a little bit dull, because most of us went through phases of that as teenagers. Now, some of you possibly were really into it. Good on you. But an awful lot of children, by the time they're teenagers, are really, do I have to do this, right? So as a teacher, you're already on a losing battle, that they don't really want to be there. And for us in the UK, GCSEs is the exam you take when you are 16 years old at the end of high school to prove you paid attention. I know lots of people who are into military history. I'm not one of them. But I appreciate, but at the same time, I have every respect for someone who is, right? But you've got all these kids, so as I say, it's the exams you study for. Finally, you get to pick they're called your options. And round about the age of 13, you pick what you're going to learn between 14, 15 and 16. And obviously you take the exams at 16. As a result of that, as I say, they're called your options. You get columns and groups of subjects. So languages, sciences, stuff like that, right? And you must pick one from each column. You must have one of these. You've got to have one of those, right? Well, I went to a Church of England school. So not only do you have to do maths and English, because you have to do maths and English, which is fine. Don't disagree with that. But out of your eight choices, 2 of them are maths and English. One of them must be a science, or at least one of them must be a science. Okay. I wanted to do chemistry. My parents wouldn't let me, made me do physics. I never really understood why. So already I was one subject down that was not the subject I wanted to do. It was one someone else wanted me to do, and I wasn't overly interested in that. Then you had to do a language. Well, I was in the dyslexic class. I was in the cat sat on the mat class. So making me do a foreign language was just fucking stupid. And so I picked German because I sucked donkey balls at French. Yeah. Well, we then had to pick geography or history. I picked history. I kind of regret it, but we picked history. Well, so think about it. Maths, English, physics, German, yeah, history. I've only got 3 choices left. Parents made me do music, 6. I managed to get computers, hurrah, 7. What was the other thing I did? Oh yeah, and because we were an RE school, religious education. So I got to pick one of my subjects. One. Well, you see, that at least makes sense, right? It does, but you see, this is the thing. Lots of times they act like you've got all these choices, but you actually kind of don't. Because as I say, you've got to do a language. You've got to do this. You know? And so for me, it is quite frustrating when, you know, because I do know that an awful lot of parents are kind of like, well, you picked it, but I didn't. Well, I wanted to do, I don't know what I was going to do instead. I had 2 things I really wanted to study. One was computers and one was photography. And photography, technically, and I'll explain that in a minute, was an option that we could have had. Except for the fact I didn't get to pick it. Why did I not get to pick it? Because it clashed with English. But think about that. It clashed with English, but everybody had to do English. So who got to take it? The answer was nobody. But they could put it on the list. And that's it. Between my parents... And you see, this is it. So you've got all these people, you know, all these parents going, oh, well, these are the subjects you picked. But they weren't. They weren't the subjects we wanted to pick, because you had to have a language, you had to have geography and history, you had to have a science, you had to have, well, but then they're not the ones I necessarily, now sure, maybe I wanted to do sciences, and so I could have, you know, maybe skipped music and done chemistry, and had a couple of them, or maybe I could have, you know, done more languages if I'd been language based. But no, you had to pick one from this column, one from this column, one from this column, which meant that you couldn't go all in on languages. So you had to have something from the column with music, music, art, and other kind of home economics. What else did we have? But the let's call them the more softy skills, the less factual based, more expressional subjects. And I'm 54, I know the feeling. My parents, God rest their souls, my parents were never proud of me. And as a result, I don't know what they thought I would be or what they thought I would do, but they didn't line me up for success. They really didn't. And for me, it was very difficult because I was... Well, my mother was quite capable of many things. Didn't really do any of them, but my mother was quite capable of many things. Well, my mother had been a nurse, allegedly. I say that because I've never seen any proof. Now, I mean that with some sincerity, is that she kind of made out she was a nurse before she met my dad. But that she had no nursing qualifications. I almost wonder if she wasn't a nurse, she just worked somewhere like, you know, the bit like the... Well, my mother, I think... You know how, like, doctors' receptionists are always like little battle axes and want to know absolutely everything about your ailment before they'll ever get you? Well, my parents were also poor, and so I grew up with make, do and mend and no real options to be, or, you know, there was no chance of owning a pony, there was no chance of anything like that, right? But my mother, as I say, my mother claims she was a nurse, but I've got a horrible feeling she was possibly more of a doctor's receptionist. Or something along those lines, you know, I know, floor sweeper, that sounds more like my mother. But because she certainly didn't have any nursing qualifications, so she was either an unqualified nurse, which, you know, school nurses were, of course, technically nurses. She may have done a bit of that, I don't know. Yeah. Well, same thing, really. But my dad worked in a bank. He was not quite an accountant, but obviously he had done some accountancy. He used to work in the deaths and benefits area, so when people died, he would be handling, from the bank's point of view, their money and sorting it out with lawyers and all the rest of it, right? That's what my dad did. This is the man who was convinced you only pay tax on money once, so needless to say, there was room for improvement in his knowledge about his job, right? It was the biggest argument me and my dad ever had, and if you want examples of how you pay more than tax more than once, I work for a living. The UK pays tax on that as we earn it. We cannot get wages without having paid tax on it. So I've paid tax on it. All the money that I then get is mine. Except if I save it, I've got to pay taxes on that. And then if I buy something, I pay taxes on that. If I give it away, the person getting it gets taxed on that. You never... So, and it's like my house. When you buy this house, I have to pay the government, I think it's 2% tax or something ridiculous, right? But you don't get it back if you sell it. It's tax. So if you know, people who keep chopping and buying houses just throw money away. And so it is. You never get taxed on it once. And we had a huge row over it. And he was adamant, you only ever get taxed on it once. And it's like, at a time, yes. But if you take, you know, an amount of money, you were taxed when you got it, taxed if you save it and get any form of interest on it, taxed if you try and spend it, taxed if you get giving it away, taxed if, because, you know, if you try and give too much away, they almost want to frigging, you know, they almost want taxes on that, because you do, it's not inheritance tax, but you do get, you know, if my dad was still alive and tried to give me money, well, inheritance tax would say, but you're giving her money, she's inheriting your money. But even if it was mine in the first place, it's really, I would say it's complicated. It's not complicated. Just know that you're going to be taxed on it more than once. And it is frustrating, I think, when you've got all these things. And like you say, my parents weren't rich. My dad worked at the bank, but he also did other jobs. Now, as a child, I've talked about this on stream before, I thought he did them because he wanted to. I thought he enjoyed them. My parents, I knew I didn't get the same stuff as everybody else. I knew my life was different to everybody else, but I did not realise the implications of some of it actually until he died. Now, that is very remiss of me. I was not aware of what my parents had actually done. So I used to work all of my summer holidays. I was not allowed a job, but I used to work at my grandparents' farm every summer while I was at school. And I never thought twice about it because I love my grandparents with all my heart. And so I never thought twice about the fact that I was going to go and spend 6 weeks of my summer holiday down on my grandparents' little farm helping them out. I loved it. It was great. What I didn't understand was that my dad was working 3 jobs. I knew he worked 3 jobs, but I thought he wanted to. My mother did an awful lot of dressmaking. She was, I won't say she was good at it, but she was all right at it. My mother was very arts and crafts faddy. And I will say, to an extent, some of that has worn off on me. It's part of the reason I do so many of the crafts that I can. Is because my brain's gone, oh, I wonder if what that's like, and I go and give it a go. Unlike my mother, however, I go back to them. Nice. My mother made me, at the age of 9, make my own school uniform. So, and I did, and I will say, what a fucking god-awful dress I made. Well, there is a lot of that, and I think, in a way, we are heading back to days more like that, because over the last 30 years, I mean, when I first got a mortgage in 1995, the interest rate on my mortgage was 6.99%, so basically 7, right? And that was a good rate. That was really fortunate, right? Most people were 8.5 or so. And when recently interest rates shot back up. Well, but round about the turn of the century, so 6 years later, interest rates, I paid off my mortgage in a fit of rage one day, don't ask. In a fit of rage, I paid off my mortgage. I'd been saving up, and it must have been, well, I was working where I am now, so it must have been after 2005. So we're talking 10 years later. I was halfway through my mortgage, and the mortgage company had written to me, oh, you're fixed rate, because we have fixed rate mortgages, so you pick, I don't know, fixed percentage for so many years. I liked those because it meant even if I couldn't really afford it, but at least I knew exactly how much every month. It wasn't going to be cheap one month and hyper expensive the next. So fixed rate mortgages sat best in my brain because I knew even if it was £700-800, that was going to be my mortgage payment for the month, every month, and it wasn't going to suddenly be more, right? So I did that, and I fixed my fixed rate, and they wrote to you towards the end of your fixed rate is coming to an end. You need to either pick a new one or go on to the variable rates. And I looked at their list and it goes, you have 1 month to decide. So I got the letter and I read it and kind of went, strokey beard, I'll think about it. I rang them before the month was over. So I was well within because it did say, you've got, this is valid for so many days. Beyond that, we cannot guarantee the options available on this piece of paper, right? So I phoned them up and I went, I want to pick this one. You can't have that, madam. But it says I've got till, a week Monday to... Yeah, well, we don't offer that anymore, madam. But you're legally bound by this document. You said I have 28 days to pick from these options. Well, and so I asked them what options they had, and there was a similar, but not quite the same option, that I was prepared to accept. Until man on the phone said, that's £1,000 admin fee. And I went, sorry, what? I get free change when my thing flicks over. I just get to pick a new one. I do not have to pay a charge for that. It says here. Oh, yeah, but that's not available anymore. No, you're missing the point. I get a free change. And I remember actually almost yelling down the phone. So you want me to pay £1,000 so that no-name numsuckle intern can click a button? You can fuck off. You... And I said, right, how much is left on my mortgage? Pardon? How much is left on my mortgage? And they explained, and I went, right, I'll pay it off then. And my dad was absolutely furious because I'd agreed to pay off my mortgage, and I was stuck on this. I was not going to pay £1,000 in admin fee for some asshole to go pick that option on a computer screen, right? Well, exactly, right? And so I paid off my mortgage due to my car accident and having the money from it, and I was in a position that I could pay off my mortgage, so I did. And my dad was livid because having mortgages does help your credit rating and all these kind of things, and it's a stupid mistake, you'll regret it. 1 week later, the interest rates went through, mortgages went absolutely doolally. And my dad was going, oh, of course you made such a wise decision. Well, at the time, honey, you thought I was the fucking... You should section me for that shit. Funny how I was right, though. Well, I do appreciate that it is maybe not quite as simple as the decision as I took, but I was not going to pay £1,000 on a mortgage that I didn't need to, for a rate that they were basically legally bound to give me, but were refusing. And I'm pretty sure that if I'd wanted to take it to court, and at a cost, obviously, that I would have won. I'm pretty sure on that, because it does state on the thing, these are legally binding, you have these days, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm pretty sure then if I went to court and said, well, I phoned up and said yes, and they went, no, we've changed our mind, they would probably turn around and say, well, there is no exceptions. We reserve the right to change our mind clause, because I did read it very carefully. So I'm sorry, but you promised that she had these decisions and that she could free of charge make this, and then you tried to stump her for £1,000 and refused to give her one of the options on the page. Bad you, pay up. I'm sure that would have been the case. But I was like, I'm done with you assholes, paying it off. And he was like, because of course, it's how banks make a lot of money of these things. Because of course, think about it. It's not their money they're lending out. I mean, let's say I have 50 grand in the bank and you need a 50 grand mortgage. It's not their money they're giving you, it's mine. It's my money. The banks don't actually have money. And all of the money that they spend and do is our money. So, I was not best pleased. And in fact, I was very moody. And so, yeah, my dad was absolutely livid for a while. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But I did the right thing. And so I was then mortgage free, which, you know, for my age was quite unusual. Because I'd have been what? Yeah. Almost certainly. And I was not in the mood for that. You know, I was also at work at the time, and so I was definitely not in the mood for that. But it is one of those things is that, you know, obviously, you know, most people do not have money floating around to buy a house because they're kind of expensive. So you have to borrow money to do it. But they do not fleece you quite a lot. Because think about it. Going back to the let's pretend I've got 50 grand in the bank and you need it. You might have to pay 8% on that. But my savings aren't getting 8%. So they're making you... Have you got my money, or thing to the value of my money? They're making you pay not back 50 grand, but 54 grand, or at least, you know, if you paid it back in 1 year, it would be 54 grand, right? But I don't get that. It's not like my savings go up by 8%. No. My savings, so, you know, interest rate on savings is, you know, is a lot less. And so, you know, having the money in my savings was worth less to me than paying off my mortgage, because the interest rate on my mortgage was going to be bigger, a lot bigger than the one, the fixed rate I just had. And so the gap between, let's say, 50 grand in your savings account and the interest rate on your 50 grand as a mortgage. Well, I've got two buckets. They're almost taking out of one of my buckets to put in this bucket, but I'm paying money on that. Oh, it makes me damn stupid if you ask me. So with that logic, I paid it off, and I have never regretted it. And it's one of those weird things is that because we pay taxes on interest earned on savings, but all the money you put in there was money you paid taxes on in the first place. But somehow you've now got to pay taxes on any interest you get on the money you've already paid taxes on. Well, it's not really an income because, well, you've already paid the taxes to cover having the money in the first place. So it is kind of a complicated deal. The reason I am very conscious of that at the moment is I've got what in the UK we can have a thing called ISAs, and you're allowed to put in up to 20 grand a year, tax free. So for the interest rate you get on that up to 20 grand, you are not taxed. And it's a new financial year, so I can put some more money in. But it is one of those kind of weird things is that because I phoned up the bank because you have to wait. It's not as of April the 1st. Well, it is, but if you do it then and they haven't done all their calculations, you screw up their calculations and they get pissy with you even though you did it. So you have to wait a few days. So this morning was enough of a few days, so I did it this morning. I paid in some more this morning. But it is just one of those things is that here in the UK there are, I mean, we don't have to do complicated tax forms like you guys in America, because God help our souls, we just don't have to do that as a whole. Now, there are people who have to fill in tax forms, but usually you've got multiple jobs, or you're a landlord, or, you know, average Joe who has one job does not have to do a tax form. Because you've got, we have a thing called pay as you earn and PAYE. And what it means, oddly enough, is as you earn your money, your employer pays your taxes out of your wages for you. So if you are normally waged in the UK, so you are in the 20% bracket, You pay 20% of your salary between around 12,500 quid, and I think it's £48,000. So whatever that is, they anything that you earn in that region, your employer sends off to the tax man 20%. So you don't have to do tax returns because you've only got one source of income. They were it. They have already sent the money. So, you know, at the age of 54, I filled in a tax form once. And when I filled it in, they said, you've got nothing to pay. So that was the end of that. So, or nothing extra to pay. And I'd had to, and it was like, we were all told, because you cashed in your shares and shit, you will have to fill in a tax form. Drinky time. That's what I need. Yay! So yeah, it's, you know, here in the UK, it doesn't matter how many earning adults there are in a household. It's irrelevant. Yay! Thank you for the follow. It's more about individuals. Now, there is such a thing, I think, as that there used to be, I don't know whether there still is because I'm not married anymore, a marriage person's allowance, in which case one of the pair of people is given a slightly higher tax allowance than the other. So we get a thing called a tax code. The current tax code for a normal average human being in the UK is 1250L. Okay? That means you're allowed £12,500 and it is the average L for some reason, but is the average, right? So the end letters do mean certain things. So there's the emergency tax codes for when you've changed job and they haven't had your P60 yet, which basically tells them how much you've earned already this year and what your tax code was and whatever. So they stick you on. We're going to assume you basically were Elon Musk and you're minted, and then that gets complicated. But as a general rule, everyone in the UK starts off with a pot of £12,500 that they can earn tax-free. After that, you need to start paying 20% on all earnings. Now, when you start a job, they do work on the premise that you're going to be paid roughly the same every month. So if you're getting, say, £1,500 a month, they will know that you don't not pay tax for the first few months and then get, you know, absolutely lacerated later. Yeah, I can understand that. Over here, we do have concessions, we do have things. So my tax code is not 1250. My tax code was 950 because I've got savings and they're taxing me on it. So that means I've effectively got two incomes. And even though it's just my savings. Now, do not get me wrong. I am not minted. But because you pay on over so much, going back to the interest rate scenario, lots of people here in the UK basically all but had, you know, in mortgage rates of, you know, 0.5% interest. Well, it meant that you could have quite a big mortgage with not a lot to pay on it, because £100,000, well, 0.5% of that is not a lot. So pretty much anything you pay towards it is paying off the mortgage. So the actual payments, because normally in a mortgage, interest is a lot of it, and you pay off. It's like how I eat scones with cream on. You've got a scone like this, covered in cream, and you go scrape with your teeth and then go nibble, so that you can pile on more cream and jam. This is how to make the most of that scenario if you are not aware. Now, this is how mortgage payments work. You scrape off the interest, and then the rest of the 3p left takes one infinitely small nibble out of the value of your pot for next time. And of course, with a 0.5% interest, that's not a lot to scrape. And then they don't make you pay a huge amount of the nibble because they're not used to it. They're expecting you to pay it off over like 22 years. Well, if you borrowed £100,000 over 22 years, divided it by, you know, 22 times 12 payments, you don't need to pay quite a lot to be paying that off in time. It's the interest that was going to bite you. But if there is basically no interest, well, your payment's going to be quite small. And well, suddenly interest rates went to, let's call them, more normal figures. The uproar of people having to pay 6% for a mortgage, and you're like, my ex-husband, who's only a few years older than me, he had a mortgage just before I did, during a bit of a mortgage crisis era, because we were coming down from that at the time. He paid 18% at one point. And here are people bitching when it got to 2% and they were having kittens. We can't afford our mortgage. But mortgage rate, when you sign a mortgage, it says rates may go up as well as down. This is the up, darling. Welcome to the real world. Because normally interest rates are not nearly zero. Now, it also meant that interest rates on savings were basically zero. I think an awful lot of interest rates, even to, well, beginning of last year, as it was turning, it might be in the year before. Time does that to me, especially when you're old. Let's say 2 years ago, interest rates on your savings were like 0.01%. It was fuck all of nothing. So, of course, you won't tax on it because you are taxed on the amount that you get in interest, not the value, not the percentage of interest. So, if you got 100 quid, what kind of disk drive is it? A USB one? By the way, I work in tech. I am technical support. I usually do servers, but it's a USB one, Nautical. Is the drive there, or is it not recognising the disk? If you don't know the answer to the question, that's okay. But is the drive there and it's just not seeing the... do you normally see the drive when it's empty? You may or may not remember, of course, but do you normally see the drive when it's empty as an option on your machine? First of all, look for drivers online. Fuck of a lot easier. Second, hang on. Hang on. Hang on, let me just finish this stitch before I forget. Otherwise, we all know what Liz does with that. So, let me share my desktop. Hang on. Can I get back here a sec? Share my desktop. Where's desktop gone? There it is. Right. A little bit chaotic, but there you go. Let me move my microphone because it's now in my way. So, if you go to Start Menu and type Devices, you get Device Manager. In here is a plethora of shit that you probably don't give a flying monkeys about. So, do you see it in Device Manager or do you see it as an empty device? Clarify, please. So you can see it in my PC, so not that I've got spare drives, but if I go... Yeah, I don't have Windows 10 on here, I do grant you that, but... oh, fuck it, just go in here. Good. I was going to say, if it shows here and it's empty, take the disk out, wipe it on your jumper, make sure there are no fingerprints on it, no major scratches. If there are scratches towards the middle, as in near the spindle, that's really bad. If they're towards the edge, that's potentially the data end, because basically it stores where everything is, what's on it in the middle, and the actual data on the outside. So have a quick look for big scratches. Little scratches are generally fine, but bigger scratches can be a problem. Now, you can get round it, not that you'd have any, and nor do I, hairspray. You can get round it with, if there are scratches and they're minor, you can kind of use a little bit of wax on it, but make sure to really buff it out so the wax is only in the scratch and not anywhere else, because of course it's a laser. But as long as it's good, usually it's a big thumbprint or something dumb, right? So give it a good rub on a really nice, clean, soft cloth. Do not use, don't use jeans or socks or whatever, Do use something soft like a jumper. So as you know, I wear chenille jumpers, so they're really good for wiping stuff on. Stuff you clean your glass, your optician would approve of wiping your glasses with. Those kind of cloths. And make sure you've not got any big ass thumbprints on it, and then try putting it back in. Because if the drive is shown but it's empty and you know that it's not, it's lying. And it doesn't like the actual disc. If your disc doesn't work, we can go hunting for a driver for you. Because there'll be one online. Honey, there's always drivers online. Reboot machine can work if your disk drive's not working. It will show in Device Manager. You can like go and delete it and tell it to rescan it. If that doesn't work, then you could, you know, but as you're seeing it, that's a good sign. The drive's alive. The only other thing can be that the lens in your CD stroke DVD, if you get to see it, and I do say if, again, maybe wipe it with a cloth your optometrist would approve of for your glasses, because maybe there's something on it, dust, dog hair, you know, whatever, thumbprint, you know, fit of rage, you thumbed it somehow. But it is a very sensitive thing, so be very careful of doing that. But last resort, I mean, if it's fucked, how more fucked can it be, right? Those kind of moments. When you've reached that stage, that's a thing. Be very delicate with it, but that's a thing. But yeah, if you can't find that, shout and we'll all play Hunt the Driver for you. Rah! See, we know what we're doing, right? Yeah. There you go. Thumbprint is usually the option. Because of course you grab the thing to put it in the hole. Well, of course you just potentially loaded it with fingerprints. And it's not that we've been, you know, we're not 3 and we haven't wiped our noses with it and grabbed it. But sometimes you look at the back of the DVD and kind of go, maybe I did. Because there'll be like this humongous great set of fingerprints on it. And you're like, I mean, obviously, we all know that from watching crime shows that everything you touch potentially has fingerprints on it. But there's fingerprints and then there's like, could see it from space fingerprints, you know. So glad it's working for you, Nautical. Yeah, I actually work as a Unix dude at work. I'm not really Windows. But as my co-workers have found out in the last month, turns out I can wipe the floor with them with Windows as well. And they're feeling a little bit humbled. Because our help desk guy, who lives just around the corner from me, actually, which is a bit disturbing because he keeps trying to work out where I live and I don't want him to know. Just because I don't want him to know. But because I'm private like that and I don't like him enough to let him know where I live. We had a problem at work, and I think I mentioned this last stream because obviously I skipped last week, but the guys had to build Windows cluster. Well, they built Windows on it, but they didn't cluster it. And when they got told, no, you got to cluster it. Well, they installed it, but they didn't configure it because none of them knew how. As it turns out, I've also found out apparently they don't know you need to put keys in to actually register Windows. So that's 2 of the boxes have already said screw you and will power down after 2 hours. And it's kind of like, where do we find these people? So I've got that fun because apparently the real kits come in now and now they've got to build them again. So I'm going to be trying to persuade them that they're going to build the cluster this time, not me. So, which will be interesting. Stefan will probably do it. But, yeah, our storage guy will probably frigging do all of the clustering for them. Yeah, we all like it when, because we've all done it. I mean, if you've never done it with the, sorry about that, I just nudged it with my foot. If you've never put a CD or a DVD in or whatever to watch, and it's gone and sat there, and you've gone. And of course, you've gone and sat down, so now you've got to get up and go and put it, you know, go over again. If you've never done that, you haven't lived, really. It is quite normal. The DVDs, obviously, like everything, the closer the data is packed, the more sensitive they are to imperfections, shall we call it. Back in the days of CD, you pretty much could stick a jam-covered CD in your computer and it would have read it. Unless you'd gouged it with a knife, you know. I don't know what Unicows is, but what printer is it, Nautical? do. Send me a picture of your error message on Messenger. Send me a picture of your error message, and I will translate into English what to do to fix it if I can. Yeah. It is very unusual not to be able to find newer, better, more adaptable. There are times that this is not true, and obviously, you know, not trying to make out that Nautica is necessarily bound by this, but if you buy something and they haven't made it for 5 years, chances are it's not on their webpage anymore, and so then you do need the thing from before because, well, they don't admit to making it anymore. Because, of course, if you've had it, you've treated it well, you only use it occasionally, chances are is it's still alive, and they don't really expect it to be. I've run into quite a few situations of that where, you know, they've made it, but according to their website, almost, we never made one of those. And you're like, well, you do, it's here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I've got one. So, there may be... I'm impressed you've still got the DVD. I'd have lost that by now. But what I tend to do is keep downloads of drivers in a Google Drive of Save Me folder for when I need to, should I ever need to reinstall everything I need it to reinstall lives in there with any key codes and all the rest of it. So I can go in there and because you may recall a little while ago, it's got to be nearly 40 years worth of mail got lost. And I'm disappointed. Trev was really upset that he lost it because he had been doing backups, but unfortunately they only had room to keep one, and it turned out it'd been corrupted for weeks, and so any backups that he had were invalid. But it was lost, can't change it, so no point crying. Just disappointed. I did lose some, don't get me wrong. I have got some of it from before, but only some of it. I lost some of the more recent stuff. Fortunately, one of the few things I lost, I still had on my phone somehow. So that was a good thing. The code that I wanted was actually on my phone, so I managed to dig that out. And save that and stick it in a file because somehow I'd not done that, because I am quite good. If it's not a piece of software where you log in and get a token kind of thing to prove that you've logged in and all the rest of it, which a lot of my stuff is because it's programmy stuff and it changes so much. But if it's a key code thing, so much like Lace8 or whatever, well, then I tend to keep that code written down so that, when the zombie apocalypse comes, it's not necessarily lost. But yeah, I'm sure Naughty Cat will get back to us, and we can help him. No, I think it's this one I want. Yes, it's this one. So, yeah. It's always a good reason to sign up for free Google Drive or whatever, is to store in a protected little area key codes, even if they're semi-ambiguously named, so that others would not necessarily know quite what the key code's for, or where to get it for, or where to get the software that goes with the key. But at least having the code somewhere that is backed up by something somewhere else that you can rely on is always a good thing. Now this doesn't look right, but we've done this before, haven't we? Because that seems to come from there, and that seems to come from there. It's like there's an extra pair in here somewhere. Because I'd expect it to almost be these two. Oh, incoming message. Here we go. You don't know what to choose. Go look at the thing. Hang on. What make model is your printer, Nautical? And is it colour or black and white? If you've got a model number, even better. Okay, that's likely going to be something one of those then. Hang on. Okay, it's not in that category. Might be that one, I suppose. Scroll to the bottom. Nope, none of those. So the obvious answer then is it is going to be that one. And it's a 4-6. Well, there we go. Okay, hang on. 4-6 50 EN. Drivers. Right, so you have a number of options. Bless your soul. I would say, hang on. I would say you want to download the 1.0.6.0 PCL6 driver and install that. The reason being, and I like to explain why I pick what seems a random thing, because there's 3 at the top and then there's a whole load of universal ones. Universals will not be specific. They are ones that will work but are not 100% tuned to your device. The top ones are 100% tuned to your device. Therefore, better for you. Do that if you can. PostScript, PCL6 and XPS. XPS and PostScript are quite spammy. They basically send everything as text. So if I said to you that printing a big hello on a sheet of A4 is not, here's a big hello on A4. It's, you know, you can be talking gigs of data to go down your printer. Is it any better? Not usually. So going with PCL6, which is usually the universal printer language, go with that one. And that would be my guesstimation. This is sometimes the problem. Companies do this. They go, oh, well, here's 28 drivers for it, but I only need one. Which one would you recommend? Could you not at least do a... If you need, if you're in the know, you might use one of these. Here is the Here is the one we prefer. Here's a list of other ones that you might install if you have a very specific need. You know. So this doesn't make sense. There's like an extra one. You come out of there. You're coming out of there. So technically you are coming out of there. But this looks like it's going to be wrong. Unless you've gone round the pin the wrong way. I need a pin. There is a pin down here. There we go. I need to see if you are wrapped round this pin. I think you might be. I think you are supposed to be here. Like that. That looks more normal to me. But no, that looks more normal to me. We shall do the do and see what comes out and see if it looks normal. See if that looks normal now. No, is the short answer. Or does it? It might do. No. Don't think it does. No, that string looks wrong. String looks wrong. This string comes from around that pin and it kind of shouldn't. So let's undo a bit of this. And take you out if I can see you. Because you won't know, I suffer from an issue where there are certain things that my brain does not compute. And the fact that this does not undo does indeed confirm that I screwed it up. So I'm going to have to undo a few. That's okay. We do this a lot on this channel, after all. So let's undo this and go back up the tree to find out how I screwed it up. Oops, you're not supposed to escape down there. Come on, out, 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 out of there. Thank you. Honey, all the time. And if you want to do a conversation and call later, we can do that. We can swear at it. It's fine. You know, I'm kind of used to it. Happens to me a lot, after all. Yeah, this is screwed up somehow. This is well confused because now I've got even more and they're still not coming undone. So maybe you are not who you say you are. Everything's sort of gone a bit weird. I wonder if I need to go back more. Oh dear. Good for you. I can't paint for shit, so I'm going to show you what I'm seeing. Now, it's not going to be overly clear because, of course, it's infinitely small. But if you look, all of these threads, there should be a pinhole here. But none of these threads actually are released by any of what's going on. And it doesn't make any sense because, well, those two go over there. These two should be free and easy, but they're round. They're attracted by some shenanigans, as you can vaguely see as I move them around. These ones, these four come out round this pin, but there's only one on this side and three on the other. So there is some horse shit going on. But if you look at this pin here, the pin has, what you can't see is there is a thread this side of the pin that goes off in that direction. So it's not like I could pull this pin out here, this one here, under my thumb, this one. It's not like I could pull it out and it would all magically sort itself out. So, yeah, and I've got to work out how and where it went. So this is going to be fun and games. It was all looking so good until then. Right, so let's undo you then. Let's go back this layer. This is what happens. But at no point do you ever consciously do a dumb thing. But somehow, clearly you did. Or clearly I did, more accurately. But this is how it works. When it all screws up, we go back and fix it. Because it will haunt us if we don't. Most crafty people well understand this problem, is that it's not that the mistake is the problem, it's the fact that it will haunt you for the next 20 years if you don't fix it. Now, you see, there's nothing there that should be holding any of this together. Exactly. Now, there are mistakes. Well, and this is the thing. I am going to be the only person who looks at this item once it's made. It's not going anywhere. It's not for somebody else. I'm not being paid for it. It's not going to be sold. It is going to sit in my window. However, we all know that the more you look at something, the more you realise you fucked it up. And there are mistakes in this. We know there are some. And we've gone back and fixed an awful lot. But if, for example, because what you can't see at this kind of zoomage, let me zoom back out. If I zoom up a little bit, it's probably not going to show you too well. No, it's not going to show you. Let me move my thing down a bit. There's a big pile of it wrapped around a little stick at the back there. So the further away from the working line a mistake is spotted, obviously, the more you have to undo. Now, I'm not against undoing some, but there's some and a lot. And because it generally only grows an inch a time we do this, if I had to go back 2 or 3 weeks worth of inches, well, no, probably not. Going back a few pins doesn't really bother me. But the more pins it is, the more it bothers me. And the fact that we have not got back to a working space, which is clean and ideal, is bugging me because, well, I almost don't see how it can be this fucked up. I mean, it clearly is, but at the same time, doesn't really make any sense that it is because, well, it just doesn't really make any sense. Alright, let's wheedle back another layer then. We're going to have to go back more layers. You and go back this layer. Considering, you know, as I'm sure you may have noticed as I do this, that didn't look right either somehow. How did that work? So I undid that and no pins came out. Oh, Did I? And I've already forgotten. I think I've already forgotten. That's okay. Take this pin right. Yep. Somewhere along here, a bobbin that was not supposed to be has changed place with a bobbin that should. Is generally how this works. But at the same time, I don't really kind of want to go back all this way because, you know. We're now back to the stuff we finished last Friday, because that's what these bottoms of this triangle is, and I still don't have a clean thing. But to get to the bottom of the triangle, I had to have 2 pairs. So how is it not coming out clean? I'm going to pull you out and see what happens. And let's see what we need to do. See if we can undo. Right, that has now given us a bottom of a triangle. So it might be an illusion looking at this. It might actually have been an illusion because obviously for anyone who's new around here, I cannot see if there are 2 cross threads. Unlike fingers, I can see that my left finger's over my right finger or my right finger's to my left finger. I can't when looking at little threads. My brain just cannot see, because they're infinitely small, which way round they are, which never helps. So it can be an optical illusion of how the threads are, but it did seem to. See, that still doesn't look right because I'm missing one. Well, I am missing, and there is a pin that I'm missing. So let's go back. There is a pin here, which is fine. These 2 aren't crossed, and so that's fine. They should come undone. There is a pin that goes in here, which I must put back before I do this. And then these 2 meet at the bottom. And sometimes you do this and you're really confused because everything's back seemingly where it was, but now it's right, and you never saw any blatant mistake, but now it's different, and you just kind of shrug off and go, whatever. So, you see, now, everyone coming out of there is right. So, deep breath, time for some drink. That's what it is. That's what I need. I need a drink. It's amazing how twiddling bits of string, considering you only really technically deal with 4 twigs with string on them at a time. Bobbins and thread. Yeah, whatever. Twigs and string. I know what we haven't said today. Stick! Sorry. So let's put you back. Go back in here because we borrowed you from that packet, and you go back over there like that. Good. And we try not to have you too mated around that. That's okay. See, at no point did we blatantly find a mistake, but somehow, yeah, it all works. Fuck it, whatever. Life is short. Worry not. Right. But yeah, definitely every crafter knows that, bear in mind, like all net curtains, you don't generally sit 1 inch from it. It's not like, I know this isn't a bookmark, but it is bookmark sized. So it's not like it's a bookmark and you're going to be holding it and you'll pick it up and at some point it will be like 1 inch from your face or anything like that. This is going on a window that I almost don't acknowledge its existence, right? It's a window at the top of my stairs and I see it once a day as I crawl out of my pit and go downstairs in the morning. Hello, hello, hello. And so because I only see it, kind of first thing in the morning when I'm not really awake, I kind of walk past it and don't acknowledge its existence. In the winter, I've got a light on and I'm more likely to see it. In the summer, I'll be half looking out wondering what the weather's like, so I'll be looking through it, not at it. And because I walk past it and not sit there staring at it all day, so I mean, if it was a net curtain and it was, I know, to the right of my work here and there was immediately a window, I would be more likely looking at it because I'm sitting immediately in its proximity all day. I would notice more things about it. But I will be walking past it pretty much before I've had my morning pee, let alone caffeine or truly woken up. So, I'm usually looking at the dogs, making sure I'm not tripping over one falling down the stairs. So it is going to be pretty invisible, but we all know that when you made it, even though you don't remember deliberately where all the mistakes are, you can't look at it and not see the mistakes. Because your brain does remember that you made some and it knows what to look for because, well, it spotted them along the way. And I worked doing backups for a number of years for my current employer. Well, client, that's more accurate. And they had on the front of their backup unit well, and that's the thing. We've discussed this many times on our channel because we need to allow ourselves the grace of accepting that the effort to go back is too far. And because if whether you knit, crochet, make lace, weave, whatever it is skill you do, if it is non-destructive, i.e. you're not sawing off bits of wood or whatever, if it is something that you can effectively, let's say, rewind time on, the further back you go, the greater increase there is you will make a new error on your way forward. So if you go back 3 or 4 stitches, crochet, knitting, this, even, a rowing, weaving, you'll unwind it, great. But the further you go back, the greater the chance is you will make a mistake on the way forward again. Now, it might be a whole new different mistake. That absolutely can be true. But there is a great, if you only have to undo 5 stitches, chances of making a mistake in 5 stitches are, generally, you'd like to think you're reasonably confident or you wouldn't be doing it. But if you had to go back 50 rows of 300 stitches on a complicated pattern, no worries, naughty count, well, then the chance is higher. It's significantly higher. Because the more complicated a thing you have to undo, and the more of it you have to undo, well, it's a bit like, if you're knitting and you've got a cable and you're doing a cable every 7th row. Now, as we've all said, if you have a knitting pattern, it says cable every 7 rows. Well, is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 now cable? Or is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and cable? Is the cable the first row? So is it really 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, cable, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, cable. I mean, there's a lot of ways of interpreting some of this crap. And until you're autistic, you don't truly appreciate the levels of grey that can be found in what sounds like a very specific set of instructions. And when you're a crafter, some of, that can apply because, well, now you've gone back 15 rows. Well, which row of your cable row did you start on? Which it might have taken you a long time to go back that far. Well, now you don't remember which bit you were on. And you can really introduce far more problems. So sometimes you just have to accept there will be mistakes in your work and give yourself permission to be human. We are not machines. We are not able to sit here and kind of blindly go, I've got my eyes closed by the way, and go, and expect perfection to come out the other end. Because it won't. If you're in a bit of a mood, your tension will be different. You may make different mistakes. If you're in a really good mood, maybe you will rush things and make different mistakes. Your life impacts your craft, whether you like it or not. Whatever craft you do, your life impacts that. The weather can impact your stuff. Consistency is usually the answer for every single thing. So for the stitches that I'm doing here, while the design is my own, and therefore I can do whatever the fuck I fucking like, actually, the truth of the matter is, well, especially when something doesn't seem to add up, and you're sitting there going, is it my fault or is this pattern shit? Right? Now, I'm doing, in my ground stitch, I am doing what's known as half stitch. So when I do, as I'm about to, so I'll explain, because, I know most of you are not lace makery dudes, right? And already this looks wrong. But it's not. Worry not. It is right. So cross is left over right. Drop. Right? And twist is right over left. Drop. Right? That is half stitch. Okay? Yeah. Now, so I will now do another half stitch. So cross in the middle, twist two edges. Great. But I could have done full stitch. Now, it's not half stitch because you might think if that was half stitch, you do the same again. That's known as full and a half, right? Or whole and a half in some places. And again, a bit like if you crochet in America, wrap, poke, wrap, pull is a double. Well, that's a single in the UK. Or is it the other way around? Fuck knows. Anyway, yeah, it's a double in America, single over here. Or is it a treble over here? I think it's a treble over here. But this is why it gets confusing, because I don't use UK terminology for crochet, right? It's double by my standard, because you did two wrap and pulls, right? That makes perfect sense. I think British call it a treble, just to fuck shit off. So, but then what do they call a slip stitch? Because, or a single is a slip stitch, but no, it's not. And it's just, sometimes it's not worth it. But like a lot of these things, there is a time when you're left sitting there going, the terminology can vary and different stitches can have the same name, or the same name can cover multiple stitches. But as long as you're consistent, irrelevant of whether I did cross stitch, cross twist, cross twist, which is arguably a whole one, or half stitch, it doesn't matter as long as I always do the same. It's the same for the number of twists. I could be doing double twists. I'm not, but I could. As long as I always do double twists, it'll look fine. It's when you change your mind midway through that it stands out like a sore thumb. And this is true for nearly every craft that we do. It is the consistency. It's not necessarily exactly what you did, as long as you always... It's a bit like if you crochet, you can... When you poke and scoop your thread, do you poke and scoop or do you poke and wrap? Well, as long as you always do the same again, no one gives a shit. It will come out looking even, because it will be even, because you have always done the same thing. It's only when you change your mind that it matters. Which is why... Well, the only thing you can do, of course, is drop a stitch. Drop the stitch. If you're doing, say, standard stockinette, nothing more complicated, yes, you could drop the stitch, go back, fix it, and come back. Or at least fix it enough and hide it a bit more. But the moment you introduce pattern to that, it starts getting more complicated. And again, you get into the I'm more likely to fuck up going back through the pattern than dealing with a small loop of yarn bite me. And I've done it. If you know, you are welcome to go back through my YouTube channel, which is mainly there for my posterity than yours. And I know Christy is watching it, bless her soul. God, seriously, you've got more patience than I do. I never, but it is there for my posterity as a record of time spent, trials and tribulations. Next time my brain comes up with a massive project it wants to do, this is how I'm going to tell it to go and do one, because, well, this is what happened last time, right? So this is the main reason I'm doing this on stream, is to document my progress, to chat with you guys, because it's always far more fun to chat with someone when you're crafting, but it is my documentation of that, right? And you're welcome to go back and see. There are times that I've looked back and say, all the way back here somewhere, I will spot a mistake, and it's like, well, I ain't going back that far. And like you say, I'm sorry, but my sanity is worth more than the journey back to that point. I am not going back that far just to, you know, cross something another time. Not doing it. It will have to live. And it is frustrating, because you know you'll see it, and every time you look at it, there will be that little bit of you that goes... But the truth of it is, especially if you're giving it away, most other people will not see any of the mistakes that we do. So if I screw up some twists on here and the hole's a bit bigger or whatever, 99% of people, even if you go, look, it is there kind of thing, they'll go, I don't see it. Well, because they, you know, chances are they have no expectation of what it should look like. Whereas we do, because we know, we made it. We know it's supposed to do this. You know you were supposed to do that cable one row earlier. You know you were supposed to change colours and you used the wrong one. Or you know you were supposed to do a decrease there and not the row later that you did. Or you know, whatever it is, right? We have all done it. We have all looked at something we've done and gone, fuck. And the later it is, as you said, the later it is, the less likely you are to fix it. So if you've just cast off your knitting and spot a mistake, well, it's there for now, for good, right? If you've chopped your yarn, it can go do one. Because, no, that's, I'm not going back that far. No. But if it was the row before, and you can kind of drop the stitch, fix it, and put it back on your needle and then knit it, of course you're going to fix it. Of course you are. It's, you know, it's not even a question. But the more it, you know, well, this is one of the things, I think it's the Chinese who do this. It could be the Japanese. Bear in mind, I do not commit literally everything on the internet to memory. But if they get a pot with a crack in it, if they get a plate with a crack in it, they mend it, but they mend it with gold. They celebrate its uniqueness and its history. And I do think that as crafters, sometimes we do need to accept and do a little bit of that. Celebrate that that is what makes this handmade item unique. You know, the one that Liz made has got, you know, this in it. That, you know, I know I can't forget to do a motif because it's marked on my pretty pattern afterwards. But if I make one wrong, well, that's because that's how Liz did it and she made a mistake. But it makes it Liz made, not some industrial computer. Tenshi! How you doing, my friend? Awesome. Glad to hear it. Cotton is a lot harder than wool, it has to be said. Cotton is distinctly a lot harder. Because it's got such short fibres in it, does make it a lot harder. So, you know, it's not the easy one to pick for sure. That doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. But you get better with time. It's surprising, actually, how quickly you improve to a... When you very first start spinning, you start off making freaking pig's ear of everything. You know, it is pretty much pooping in your hands and clapping. You make such a mess and all the rest of it. But it is really surprising how quickly you get from pooping in your hands and clapping to usable. Now, it may not be heralded for, you know, medals of honour, but you get to usable really quite quickly. It really is quite surprising. I know, but it's also true. But yeah, I mean, I took my portable wheel around to a friend's house once because she wanted to go. And to start with, yeah, pooping in hands, clapping, absolutely. But as someone who'd never done any of it, on a wheel, which arguably adds complications to it, rather than a drop spindle, which is you can drop and park and roll, at least to start with. She was making stuff. You could have knitted a hat with that. I mean, it would have looked a bit rough. I'm not going to pretend that it was perfect, but you could have knitted a hat with that. She could have made, you know, I mean, gloves might have been a bit pushing it, but she could have made a hat with that. It was a bit artsy, but it was good enough that you could have made a hat out of that. And I do think that it is one of those things is that everyone seems to think that spinning is really complicated. It's like snooker. The principle of spinning is really... Well, and this is true, but also spinning is very much like snooker. The principle of spinning is not complicated. Actually doing it and getting it just right takes a lot of time and effort. But getting to a point where you can have fun and you're no longer just spending your entire life pooping in your hands and clapping. And if you're threading a wheel or using a drop spindle, if you actually drop your drop spindle and don't do park and roll, then you're not just spending your entire afternoon picking it off the floor because it fell apart or it snapped or it is, once you get to a point where you can keep going, you begin to enjoy it. And in the end, that's the bit that matters. I found with spinning, certainly, much as I am capable of making some yarns that I won't say look factory made, but are pretty damn even and pretty decent if I say so myself, I actually found more joy in making the yarn than I did in using it afterwards. Which was quite a surprising thing for me because I like making things. Now, of course, making yarn is making things. You made yarn after all. But I really was quite surprised at how much I loved making yarn, because you can make yarn and watch TV. Because for the most part, you don't actually need to look at what you're doing. Because, well, you can feel by your hands whether you've got enough fibres, because you almost don't process it quickly enough by looking at it. So much of it is the feel of it in your hands. Well, then you can watch TV and do it. You can hold conversations. And that, I think, is part of it. Because if you use a wheel, you generally are treadling... And that is the thing. Hand spun yarn is a lot heavier, just because it is, than, let's call it, factory made yarn. So you can have, let's say, merino. You can have the same fleeces of merino. Let's say you have, 20 clones of the same sheep, right? You all start with identical clones of fluff. The factory will produce more wool than we will. And because it's heavier, you can't, you look at, let's say, you take a jumper pattern and it says you need 7 100 gram balls of wool to make this thing out of said merino yarn. It's not going to be 7 of your balls. It's going to be 8 or 9, maybe even more than that. Because you are not a machine. You are not going to use exactly 99 hairs per thread or whatever, right? And so there'll be variants. But as a general rule, this is why most people don't understand. You get bobbins on spinning wheels and it will say, this is a 100 gram bobbin. Well, it is. But it's not. You'll weigh yours and it'll be like 130 grams. But it wasn't even fully full. Because hand spun stuff is generally heavier. And you need to take that into account when you're making your jumpers and making the yarn for it. You have to overshoot by quite a bit because it will be heavier. Now, it will also be far more sturdy, far better made, far better everything, and better for the environment, better for your mental health. But obviously, spinning yarn is not a quick process. It's not a slow process. I mean, you really can realistically, in an hour, produce 100 grams of single, potentially even quicker, depending on what exactly and how you're doing it. If you're doing what I call the voodoo method rather than inchworm, so that's worsted and but it is very difficult to compare handmade to commercially made yarn. It's the same with dyeing it. A dyed yarn commercially can be extremely specific. Handmade never is. It's much more feels. And I loved spinning. I really do. But it is because you treadle at your heartbeat. You will find you get the best yarn treadling as your heart beats or as you breathe. And your body just falls into, for want of a better word, a trance of doing it. It gets into a routine and you almost forget you're doing it because you're watching TV, you're having conversation. Back in the day, again, much like the makers of lace back in the day, lace making and spinning yarn and all the rest of it was a social thing. I'm sorry, I was searching for the word. You didn't spin on your own. Wheels had more than one bobbin and whirl so that people could spin together and have conversations while they did it. Lace making would not have been one idiot like me making strips. It would have been a group of them. And then there would have been more people sewing it all together. Not me when I finally finished making it all. And we've lost all of that. While there are plenty of us all, and here we are, who do crafting, but it's far less common today than it used to be. Spoke earlier of dressmaking. People don't make their own dresses as a whole these days. I mean, clearly there are people who do. But when I was a kid, pretty much everybody did because it was cheaper. You bought your silly packet of patterns and you went down the fabric store, you bought some fabric and you made yourself a dress, a skirt, a shirt, whatever the fuck it was that you were making, right? Whereas today, no one does that. They go down Primark and for £1 or down Poundland or Dollar Store or whatever, and they buy the cheapest, nastiest, sweatshop knockoff version of it rather than do it themselves. And then, should they like it, get really upset when it falls apart 10 minutes later because, well, it was made in a sweatshop by a bunch of, 9-year-old children. It is... The art of making things is a dying art. And in some ways, that's what draws me to it more. The less other people do something, the more I want to. Because it makes me different. And I know I am different, but it gives me a reason why I'm different that's more acceptable. To the world, anyway. Because people don't like people who are different. But if you do something, you're seen as, that's really clever. No, not really. I just bothered. There's a difference. I always put down the things that I do. Making lace is not complicated. If you can lift a stick and place it the other side of a stick, you can make lace. I hate stuff like that. Women's stuff especially. Well, and that's, of course, the other advantage of making your own. Trouser pockets. The bane of and you need to make sure you use it the right way around. But there is nothing... Every woman out there will know but it's got pockets. Because our shit does not come with pockets worth the damn. So many trouser pockets on women's trousers would be lucky if you can almost get more than like my first knuckle in the pocket. You can kind of put tops of your fingers in it. Or, should you put some shit in your pocket, you now look like you've grown lumps. Exactly, it's got pockets. Now, yes, there are times when pockets can make it look very ungainly, and trouser pockets are a good example of that, because, as we all know, the bloke with cigarettes or phone in his back pocket or his wallet in the back pocket, it stands out a mile. Unless you've got really baggy trousers, any kind of fitted trouser, something in your pockets, keys, anything, stands out a mile, because it is closely against your skin. But if you've got a dress or a skirt with a loose fitting skirt, there is no reason we cannot have decent frigging pockets on that. Boob pockets. Boob pockets on a woman are a generally bad idea because, well, boob. But so much of these things, there is no reason why a coat cannot have decent pockets. There is no reason why a jumper or a cardigan can't have a decent pocket. And when you're making your own, if you've got man hands like I do, you make bigger pockets. If you want deeper pockets, you make deeper frigging pockets. If you can reach further down in your pocket, well then make the pockets a bit deeper. I wear blokes jeans for that reason, because they got decent frigging pockets on. It's not because I need blokes jeans, I just like the pockets. And that is also another common problem. As someone who is chubbier than she should be, I still have a waist. Well, so if I buy trousers that are pre-made that fit me butt, the waist is huge. But it doesn't need to be. So I then end up wearing a belt with it, and then the belt cuts in my stomach when I sit down because, well, it has to be fairly tight because, well, it's that much smaller. Or I end up with builder's crack because the trousers pull down when I sit down. There's so much that you can do to change some of that if you make your own. And you know, because I am larger, much like karate gis, for those who do not know, are not sold in sizes. Well, they are. Yeah. Or that some pickpocket can't nick it. I mean, why can't we have inside pockets? There's no reason why not. It's there is always just something that you sit there going, this would have been perfect, but, and usually it's pocket based, or the sleeves. Now, I have long arms. Now, I know this is rolled back, so I've got my sleeves rolled back, but that's because, well, I think this is a 4XL jumper, so it's baggy on me, so therefore the sleeves aren't really sitting on my shoulder. So if I stick the sleeves on my shoulder, well, you'd see I'd roll them down. But this is a man's jumper. They're designed to have longer arms, but I've got longer arms, so I naturally make my jumpers with slightly longer arms. I also make my jumpers with slightly longer bodies because I don't want, unlike most women's jumpers and tops that you see, and the women amongst us will agree with me on this, I don't want a gap at my middle. I don't want it to end at the top of my trousers. I want it to either tuck in or overlap, so especially if it's a jumper, so there isn't a cold frigging draft in the winter. I want to be warm because that's why I'm wearing it. Now, sure, there are times you want a more cosmetic look, so it's just really for your arms. But then that's fine. That's what you want. That's what you're building it for. When you're wearing it to stop the cold draft in winter, I want it to stop the wretched cold draft in winter. So I want it to come down halfway up my butt because, well, that way it's got a bit of a seal for when I'm sitting down, and you know, it's so, you know, when you make your own, you can make the body longer, you can make the front a bit wider because you've got more boob than the pattern allowed for. Or you can make the arms longer because you've got slightly longer arms than maybe the average dude of your size. Well, but they're not big changes. It's a bit like a recipe. If you make, I don't know, white sauce for putting in a lasagna. Butter, flour, milk. But if you want it a bit cheesy, well, you throw some fucking cheese in it then. If you want some garlic in it, throw some fucking garlic in it. If you want to use onion powder in it, put bloody onion powder in it. If that's what you like, you can add it. Or if you don't like it, don't add it. Over here we have shepherd's pie and cottage pie, and the main difference is peas, right? Shepherd's pie has like peas and carrots in it. Cottage pie does not. I think that's the right way around. Well, if you don't like peas, don't put fucking peas in it. Simple as. If you don't want veg in it, make a cottage pie then, because it's basically the same shit but without the veg in it. But all of these things, if you like fish pie and you don't want to put that in it, well, don't put that in it. Put something else in it. You know, when you do your own, you can interchange it with whatever you want. And much like if you build your own, you are not set to the colours that come on the pre-made one in the store. So let's say, like jeans, if you made your own jeans truly and properly, they don't have to be blue, black or white. If you want them to be bright yellow, make a bright yellow pair. If that's what if you were truly, depending on how far you go. But like all of these things, you don't have to, if you want to make a t-shirt and you want to embroider your own shit on it, well, now you're not constrained to the ones you find in the shop. You can put any picture, words, whatever on your t-shirt. And people have lost sight of the joy of making things. Because, sure, we all may curse a lot while we're making it. And as you may have noticed, I certainly do. But it doesn't, the curses along the way, the almost tears of realising you've screwed something up, and there's no way you can live with it, because we all, back on the subject of mistakes and living with it, there are mistakes you can live with, and then there are mistakes that you actually can't. And so, irrelevant of how far back it is, irrelevant of how much you will hate your life for doing it, you also know you cannot leave that, especially if it's going to be something that you use or keep, because all you're going to do is stare at that for the rest of your life. And so you can't live with it. You've got to fix it. And whether it breaks your heart in two to go back that far and do it, you've got to fix it. And whereas there are mistakes that you go, yes, I can see it, but the amount of effort to undo it to fix such a small, minor thing, no. And that's fine. But we have to draw those lines, and everyone draws those lines differently. Some may go, well, if it's more than 20 stitches back, I'm knitting, I'm not doing it. If it's more than 3 rows back, I'm not going back that far. I'm not dropping a stitch that far to rework it all. And other people, it can be half a metre. It could be 100 rows and they'd still go back and do it. Well, good on them. They've clearly got more patience than I do. Hats off to you, dude. But for most of us, if it's a couple of rows back, chances are almost certainly. But the further it is, the less chance there is. And, but when you've finished, mistakes and all, you're still pleased with what you did. Yes, you might look at it and go, it would have been so much better if I hadn't screwed that. But the truth of the matter is you still made it. It will still be warm. It will still fit, hopefully. Unless you really buggered it up. Whatever it is it will still do the job you intended. As long as it is still a viable product despite the mistake. There's a guy who lives not too far from me who does dressmaking videos. I think he's on YouTube. Short videos anyway, because they're all the same shit all over the place. And he makes clothes with the sewing machine, so obviously it's fairly fast making, but he managed to make 2 right sleeves for sewing. And he was gutted because he didn't really have the spare material to make the sleeve right. Well, you've got a feel for the dude, you really do. But it's not one you're going to be able to fix easy if you haven't got the spare material, So I just got an email and my brain got distracted. A little bit kind of, ooh, a squirrel kind of moment. Exactly. There are times when you cannot fix it. And that it will, realistically, it's a bit like if you dump too much salt in a cake, because we all know you're supposed to put a little bit of salt in a cake, but not a lot. If you inadvertently use salt instead of sugar, you are not going to come back from that. That is not going to happen. And it is really or you burn it, you can't really undo. And, you need your friends at that point to be sympathetic for you because, well, you screwed it up. So yeah, it is one of those kind of aspects that if you proper messed it up and you cannot, no matter how much you might want to or not want to, fix it, every crafter who understands your craft will have sympathies for you, because in situations like that, if you've put the pattern the wrong way up, you've cut it out, you can't undo that. It's a destructive thing. Much like if you drill the hole in the wrong place with woodwork, you can fill it, but it's going to show, right? Now, depending on where it is, you might get away with it more. If it's at the bottom underneath and, not a view most people don't get, you can get away with it. But it will haunt the hell out of you, but it won't stop it working. But if it's, you put the doorknob on the wrong side and now, and you can't turn it over and you can't hide that. It is now. That is, that hole has got, you've got to do either make one the other side and make make it decorative, and or just live with the fact that you screwed it up. So yeah, there are times when, you know, with all the best intentions in the world, because none of us set out to make it wrong, that's for sure. But inevitably we do succeed quite a lot more than we like to admit in making mistakes. And, well, sadly, sometimes you cannot fix it. Oh God, no. Yeah, I think that's quite a common faux pas. Drilling through the thing that you are resting it on to do the drilling. Yeah. Oh, that pin's in the wrong place. Hang on. Move this one. There it is. And then we put this one in here. That's better. It is. And the worst thing is with a little bit of brain cells, you think, but I should have seen that. I should have realised that this wasn't right. But somehow, in the moment, absolutely not one iota of any brain cell went, this doesn't seem right. I mean, I did a really dumb thing once. I worked at a company and they had a vending machine for a drinks machine, and that's all we had. And the stuff in there was frankly horrible. Tea was kind of bright orange. It tasted like death. And then they had two kind of juice drinks. One was highlighter orange. In fact, pretty much that sort of orange. And the other was the green equivalent of that. So neon green. I mean, there was no good about this drink. They didn't taste too bad, but they were a little bit bright. Anyway, when I drink stuff, unless it's a glass of Coke, pretty much never drink to the bottom because, well, too many trips to coffee morning at church as a child where there was kind of chunks of scale in the bottom of your cup because no one cleaned the machine out enough. So it was gritty, so you just didn't drink to the bottom. And it put the fear of God up me in that chewy drinks or crunchy drinks is not quite what I'm after. So it is very exceptional that I drink to the bottom of a cup of anything, even though I haven't had a chunky chewy drink in over 40 years. But I still can't bring myself to do it, especially drinks that are cloudy like tea and coffee, right? Where you can't see the bottom. Well, it is, but at the same time, it's not a pleasant moment, right? And so I tend to, especially with tea with milk in it, coffee with milk in it, I will not be drinking to the bottom because, well, I can't see what's down there. And so I would get some toxic orange tea out of the machine and I would drink till I got like this much at the bottom and put the cup aside. And being stupid, when I went to get the next drink, I didn't take the old one with me. I would grow a pile on my desk. For those who are not aware, I am a person of piles. I like piles of things. Yeah, I collect piles of things, right? Well, I'd kind of grown a cup. I think I had 3 piles of cups. Now, I had 3 piles of cups. Think about that. I had poured the remnants into a cup and stacked it on the empties, right? So I had a pile of empties, cup, not with necessarily a lot of liquid in it, but with some liquid at the top. And I wanted to take them all to be recycled in the recycling thing. Now, as I said, some of them really didn't have a lot of liquid in. And I remember doing this so clearly. So I picked up, pile A, and looking at the angle I was at, pile B looked clear. So I picked up pile A, put it in pile B. Picked up pile B, looked at pile C, which again looked fairly clear, put it in. But notice not all the cups had seated down to the bottom. Rather than going, because there is liquid in it. Numbnuts doofus chip for brains here. Put a hand on the top cup, push down. Well, for those who are not aware, force of effort when sent through a much smaller opening creates a magnitude of pressure. So instead of a small amount of pressure, which was really shouldn't have been needed, or thinking, oh yes, that's because I sprayed pretty much an entire bank of 6 desks. Because, of course, I went like this, the liquid went woohoo, and did the whole, cold tea fountain. But, of course, it wasn't just tea. There was some of that multicoloured green and orange shit in there as well. Because I did drink all 3. And it was it's not something you'd have wanted to drink. The scum collection was not what you wanted to drink. Because it was probably a couple of days old, let's truly be honest here. So, I mean, it didn't have fur, it didn't talk to you, but it was a bit of a pile, because the drinks were free. And, of course, those plastic cups really don't hold a lot of liquid. So I had quite a few, and I'd put the remnants, and, well, jettisoned them to orbit is probably the best description. All over me. I mean, I wore most of it, I will point out, because obviously I was closest. No one else actually wore any. A few desks did, but no people. It was only me. But my brain knew, almost as I started the pressure and before the liquid came out, that this was not what I was supposed to be doing, but didn't stop. It was that slow-mo car crash kind of thing of, I am pressing, wait, maybe they're not sitting because of the squirt. Yes, liquid. Right? It was that kind of thought process. Because it really did happen in very, very, very short period of time. But obviously my brain only went, oh yeah, the liquid, shouldn't have done that kind of moment, rather than those liquid, don't do that. It's that was the liquid that you didn't take out, and that's why they weren't sitting straight, you dumb bitch. Fortunately, it was the end of the workday, is all I can say to that. But utterly humiliated. But the lack of forethought is a very strange human thing, because so your dad drilling through your table, it will have been the same thing. This is taking a long time to drill through. Zzz, and then picking it up and going, oh fuck. It is surprising how little your brain, which can be very intelligent on occasions, can do some real dumb shit. And you're almost left sitting there going, and I drive a car, I operate machinery, I cook, I touch chemicals, and then I can do this? Wow. They shouldn't let me live on my own. I'm not an adult. And it is kind of funny to me how stupid we can be sometimes for things like that. For that complete lack of there must be a reason, and just proceeding anyway, and not kind of going, I should stop and reevaluate this more thoroughly. No, fuck it. Let's just keep going. It'll be all right. It'll come out in the end. Yeah. And as you say, drilling hole in table is kind of a destructive one way. Can't exactly undo that kind of process. I mean, sure, you can done it again. Put it in the wrong hole. Needs to go in the previous hole. Sure, you can catch all of the wood shavings and put glue in them and use it as a plug to help plug up the hole. And you will hide it far more than pretty much anything else you will do. However, you will still see it. It's going to be there forever. It will haunt your soul. So yeah, I have never forgotten that. I remember going so red as the liquid shot everywhere. And it's not like no one was in the room either. You know, there were witnesses. It was bad. It was bad, man. The shame level was chronically high. I mean, chances are most of them now is, do you ever remember a girl catapulting drink around? No. Because it wasn't them, right? I mean, for a few weeks, maybe a month or so afterward, anyone there possibly would remember, because we were all still in the same room, in the same environment. But I can tell you now, I would have been 18, 19. So we're talking 30, you know, talking like 30-something years ago. They're not going to remember. I would be surprised if they actually remember. I mean, maybe someone does, but chances probably not, because it wasn't them. If it had been them, they'd remember, just because, well, it's mortally embarrassing. See, that's something we don't use so much anymore, and part of me's glad, because there were some minging tablecloths out there in the world. But also, I mean, for example, one of the things that I was a little disappointed, when my dad died, there was something in my dad's house I expected to find and didn't. In fact, there were a few things I expected to find in his house and didn't. One, of course, was all of his camera equipment that he never mentioned selling. And he still had all the bags, but they were empty, which was a bit suspicious. But where he had stored them, you were not going to it's not like the cleaner would accidentally have been able to move them. No. This was, you had to pile loads of shit off it, open a chest, go in through under a pile of shit and get to them. So I assume he sold them, but just kept it quiet. Because he had a deal that one of those was for me. It was been promised to me for many years, and well, it wasn't there. None of it was there. Not one lens was there. And he'd had a great pile of the stuff, but all the bags were there. Well, why would you flog it all without the bag? Anyway, clearly he did. But one of the things I expected to find was, when I was very, very young, so I'm talking before teenagers, my father hand embroidered a cotton bed throw for a single bed. And I am talking tons of tiny little ass embroidery flowers, right? He got stencils and he'd get them pressed on and then he'd sew over the stencil. But he put an almighty shit ton of little flat hand embroidered flowers all over this thing. And because we had dogs, we never put it on my bed. So I expected to find it in one of the drawers or a cupboard somewhere, because it put freaking life and soul into that shit, and I'd never got to use it. And I thought, well, what I could do is put it on the spare bed in my, in my house. 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, the one thing that I've got, which is kind of quite a flex, is my ex-husband's great-grandfather used to do crochet, and I've got all of his shit and all of his knitting needles and all the likes, right? I have that. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it adds up. I have all of that. So from that perspective, I do have something. I've got a big pile of music that was some great uncle or other, which was really quite freaky because it was not generally talked about in our family about who was good at what, right? We were not that kind of family. And as I said, my parents were never really proud of me of anything, so they certainly wouldn't have gone, "Oh, Liz has got this." It certainly wouldn't have come up in conversation. So it was a real surprise to me when my dad rang me. I was an adult. Hey. But when my dad rang me, I was an adult. I'd long since moved out of home when this happened. And I got a phone call. "You've inherited some shit." Where are you from? Who died? I mean, bear in mind, I hadn't heard anyone in our family had died, and suddenly I was inheriting shit. Oh, it's some great uncle or other, and it's like, okay. He left me a 1947 Boosie and Hawkes wooden flute. Bear in mind, I am a flute player. I can play most things, but I am a flute player. And a huge box of music. And the flute was in absolutely perfect nick. And it was kind of like, well, it is, but at the same time, how the fuck did he know? I have no idea who died, other than it was some great uncle or other. I mean, my dad didn't even seem to know who it was that had died. And you're kind of going, it would have been, I wish I'd known. But when my gran died, I did get something from my gran's house. We were all told as grandchildren that we could pick one item from the house. And we did. And most of us were sensible. One was not. I have nothing of my mother's. Other than utter disdain for her. And I did rescue a whole bunch of stuff that my dad made. One thing I did not rescue were the little wooden boats. Now, when I say little wooden boats, most of them were about, well, pretty much kind of that kind of size. And, you know, off the screen tall. So they were probably a foot plus tall and about a foot long. And there were things like, they weren't the Mary Rose, but something looking like the Mary Rose kind of deal. Or, you know, the Black Pearl or whatever, but obviously not black, but you know what I mean. So they were kind of Tudor ships with oars and cannons and shit. But when I say my dad made them, I mean my dad fucking made them. He got almost like not life-size boat plans, but he made them as if they were life-size boat plans. So rather than getting a stick-on bit of plastic or whatever, or bending some, you know, getting a sheet of wood and just kind of bending it and trimming its size, each plank for the keel was an individual piece of wood that had been soaked and slowly bent, held in place with pins, because obviously you don't use nails when it's that small. Each the V kind of UEV shapes that used to structurally hold the thing were hand carved. When he did all of the rigging that had little pulleys on it, each pulley he had hand carved. He had used kind of thread like this, but purple usually, to do the rigging, and then tied each individual knot to make the webbing that you'd have climbed up. And he made tiny little cloth curtains, sail things to go on it. He did the whole fucking shebang. The biggest one was a 3-foot tug, right? And this thing actually had room in it with access that you could put a motor in and sail it. He never actually fucking did, I should point out. But all of these boats were technically water sailable. I mean, most of them would have just fucked off and fallen over, but they were technically sailable, right? And he had 5 or 6 of these fucking things. All they are is dust magnets. I'm not really into boats. I mean, don't get me wrong. I fully, absolutely understand the amount of time, effort and patience and the effort that it took him. Because it was monumental. But I don't like them or want them, so I got rid of those. But I did keep the tapestries that he had made. I kept the rugs that he made. Mind you, I used them for the dogs, so they're kind of knackered now, but at least I have them. I use them. I felt good that, because they're minging. They're real 70s ugly fucking things, but so they're really horrible colours. They're absolutely disgusting. You wouldn't ever want one in your house now. But But at least they got used. They still do. The dogs can have them because they're softer and they're warmer, and so in winter they can use them as have them on the floor, and they're stops it being quite so cold. Even though they got rubber flooring, so it's not really cold in there at all. But it's a bit more fluff to sit on and make a nest out of and whatever. But it was just one of those things, is that I wanted to keep as much of the things that he had made as I could, because that bedspread was the only ever thing out of all of the hobbies that he did that he made for me, and I couldn't find it. Wasn't there. I was gutted, because he never made me anything. He made everybody else something. I mean, fuck, he made one of his friend's daughters a 4-poster turned bed, so it had elaborate kind of turn spindles and all the rest of it. I couldn't even get him to make me a warping board, which is a pitch frame and lumps broom handle stuck out of it. He wouldn't do that for me, but he did that for a friend's daughter. It's a bit like he flew all the way to China to watch people prance in tutus, watch their children, but wouldn't come, an hour up the road to watch me get my black belt in karate. His only living relative. Thanks for that, Dad. So, bitterness does run quite, prevalent in my life, but I was sad that I couldn't find that. And I did look everywhere, because I had full reign of the house for months. I did look everywhere. It was not in that house. I don't know what happened to it. I assume my mother threw it out, because that's the kind of shit she did. My mother threw out all sorts of stuff. Yeah. I think it's one of those things, is that I remember my dad making that bedspread. Yeah. My mother was very much, it was never a court-appointed deal, but my mother, I knew from an early age I was an inconvenience to my parents. I don't know whether they didn't plan to have me, but I certainly was an inconvenience to my parents. And that was always very clear to me. My mother moaned about my existence morning, noon and night. Now, I'm not going to say some of her complaints didn't have a basis in reality. So, for example, my mother had the bladder the size of a pea, allegedly because I kept kicking it. I was breech birth, and so my mother obviously didn't have fun. But I can't exactly do anything about that. It wasn't really a choice, It's not like I stabbed her, although that might have maybe made a difference. But, there are a lot of things where I felt resentment a lot of the time as a child. And I was expected to be the typical not seen, not heard child. In a house where there was my parents and me. And the dog. I was not allowed to do this. I was not allowed to buy anything because I didn't have any money. They didn't have any money. But I didn't know that. But like I said right at the beginning, all I knew is that my life was slightly different. But I didn't really understand why it was different until my dad died. And then the realization that he had worked 3 jobs just so he had enough money to give us what we had. I didn't realise that. I thought he did bookkeeping for people he knew because he enjoyed it. Not because he had no choice but to get extra money. My dad, when he died, which was what? Well, when he retired, which was just before 2000, I think he retired 1998 or something. His salary was 20 grand a year. And now that was probably average round about then. But he was a manager. But that's all he had. And my mother was working but didn't pay anything towards the house. And he gave her loads of money for the house to buy things for clothes and and all the rest of it. So by the time he'd paid the mortgage, by the time he'd given my mother £100 a week for food and clothes and shit, and then she could ask for more for birthdays, Christmas, whatever, he didn't have any left. So he was doing bookkeeping to make up for that. He was doing his carpentry shit to then have fun spendies for himself, so that he could buy his camera equipment, so that he could afford a new lens, so that he could go on holiday. That's how he afforded that. He had to work 3 jobs. And I never really appreciated that as a child, because all I saw was Daddy was always working and didn't have any time for me. My dad was the better parent. My mother was terrible. Because my dad was doing it so that I could have things like my musical instruments, so that I could, so I could have a pair of glasses to see where I was going. My mother was blowing it all on drink and clothes she never wore, and yeah. When my mother left my father, he obviously went through the stuff in the wardrobe. There was stuff in there he didn't even know, and it was like designer shit. My mother was 5'2" and anorexic. It would have hung like a rag on her, but she never wore it, probably because it hung like a rag on her. But she'd spent a fortune on it, because she earned nearly 50% more than what he did at the time. And she'd spent it all on these clothes, drinks and cigarettes. But at the same time, he'd let her do that. Because once she started working, he didn't say, well, it's a 2-way street, you can contribute. He let her keep everything that she earned, and still paid her out of his salary, as much as if she didn't. So she had more money than she knew what to do with, in comparison, and was stupid with it. Which is probably why the bloke she ran off with and married has divorced her. Because he's certainly not married to her now, and she's not dead apparently, so she must have been divorced again. Anyway, it is 5:30. I am going to take a picture of what we've done today. Hopefully we didn't fuck it up too bad. Because it is usually around this time that we spot the mistakes in it. So let me take a photo. Where are we? We want it to be about there. And then I look at the photo and go, don't think I did. No, I twisted those, twisted that, that's good, they're twisted, that looks right. Common problems are not twisting the bits between these or whatever. But everything else looks nice and even and unfucked, because we unfucked it, so huzzah. There are occasional times you look at it and go, what? Oh, actually, I've seen one. I'm not going back and doing that. How in the name of sanity did I do that? So, let's see if we can see it on here. Okay, hang on. Yeah, you can see it on here if you look really hard. Let me use this as my stick of poking. At the end of, where is it? I've got to find it. There it is. If you look here, this is one that will not be picked. This pair is supposed to come out here and go into here. Well, as you can see, only one thread goes into here. Well, as you work with 4, how is that fucked off over here? Now, the worst thing is I can tell from the photo, because obviously I can blow up the photo, that it's not like it's just wrapped round the pin. I can see that is not the case. Maybe it is, actually. It might be it's just wrapped around the pin. Where does it go? Let me calculate its path. Hang on. It goes down there, down there. So what happens is unfortunately, where is it on here? This let's say this goes wrapped around here and then comes back here. Well, unfortunately, it then goes down here like this and comes back and goes through this. So I'd have to undo this, but I might be able to tweak it. I'm going to do that now, though. But if I don't, I'll forget. Let's give it a go. Right, let's do this. Yeah, the problem is I can't get close enough to do this well. I need my pin. Hang on. It is this right here. I think goes round that pin. Ouch! Just stabbed myself with a pen. Yeah, that one. Yeah, so let me put this back in using the camera. Like that. Now, that's there. So I need to follow this down here. So round about here, one of these two should pull. Problem is the chat's in the way. No, it's a bit bigger. Need it bigger on my screen. So it comes down here into this pin here. So somewhere in here, one of you two. Problem is you're twisted because you're supposed to be. And I need, and for the first time in forever, this doesn't look normally they look a bit untwisted like this, even though they're not. And for the first time in like 20 years, this doesn't look untwisted. And it doesn't help that it's behind chat. So there it is. Look, see, that pulled out through there quite nicely. Excuse me, I've got to hide chat. I can't fucking see through. Hang on, I need to do a little bit of jiggery pokery shit. And go to no. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. Sorry. I need to hide your chat because you're just being in the way. So we've pulled that down to here, which is good. This thing comes through here. Now this is going to be a problem, but already by being down here, it's a lot less visible. And we can fluff some of these stitches a little bit. See, there you go. Fuck it. No, it's right. I thought I saw an untwisted pair, but they're not. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Chill. Breathe. 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 But there you go. We fixed it without actually fixing it. That round of applause, I think, is deservedly on that one. Let me put my ABS back to normal. So yeah, there we go. See, that's the problem. You take a photo of it and immediately your brain goes, look, you fucked that bit up, and that bit, and that bit, and that bit. But you don't see it until you take the wretched photo. And that, by the way, the YouTube photo is going to be the unfucked version. Sorry, it's going to be the fucked version, so you can spot it yourselves. But it is funny how staring quickly at a photo and your brain goes, well, that's wrong, that's not right. But when you look at it, like here, I can't see any of it's wrong until I look at the photo. It's daft. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you for today. I'm going to quickly see if there's anyone that I should share you with. So bear with me one moment. See who's doing what out there. Let's see. Playing games. Knitting. Knit. That's okay, Tench. That's okay. We're good at that. We're good. It's okay. I'm going to hand you over. Now, I need to put this back. Right. Click on that. So yeah, I'm going to hand you over and we're going to watch some more craftiness. And I will see you next week.